Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto goes back in time to save the Uzumaki clan. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Kyoka, Suigetsu, Totsuka and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Ambition of the Uzumaki clan Chapter 1. The last 20 years in the elemental nations had been one of the darkest times in recorded history. The Fourth Shinobi World War wreaked havoc and chaos through all towns and villages throughout the lands. There were no longer any sort of sanctuary available to the innocent people of the world, even the tiniest creek in the most isolated lands were filled with bloodshed and slaughter. 2 decades ago the world had a population of over 50 million people, but the number had dwindled down to a mere 10 million because of the war. The evil forces of Uchiha Madara swept the lands of peace and life. No one would be safe as long as the man was alive. For the first time in history, all nations in the lands banded together to fight against one enemy, but they were not winning. The wicked forces of the Uchiha had proven to be far too much for the feeble might of the allied shinobi nations. The legendary Uchiha had employed some of the darkest jutsu in existence to ensure the defeat of his enemies and the success of his peaceful world. The ever-expanding population of Zetsus virtually gave Madara unlimited amount of troops, and their average power was higher than that of an average chunin. The price was too high for very Zetsu dead would even out to be 2 humans sacrificed. The human population had grown pessimistic and hopeless. No one believed that the allied forces would ever defeat the superpower of Uchiha Madara, it was far too great a task for any man. These negative thoughts were only fueled by the consecutive deaths of the 5 kage of the elemental nations. The supposedly all-powerful beings of each nation had been discarded as weaklings by the truly all-powerful Uchiha, and it was by their deaths that many people had given up on the war. But like all stories ever written in history, there was always a dim light shining magnificently in the midst of the darkest times. Since 10 years ago Uzumaki Naruto had been the supreme commander of the allied shinobi forces, and he had been battling gallantly against the Uchiha and his forces. It was only because of the Uzumaki that the humans have survived so long against Madara and his Moon's Eye plan. Back at the start of the war Madara and his minion Uchiha Obito managed to revive the Juubi, but that plan was scrapped when Naruto and the previous Hokage all banded together to rip it apart. With the aid of the most powerful shinobi to ever live, Naruto managed to seal some of the Juubi's power into himself, rendering the Moon's Eye plan useless. Naruto had taken an equivalent amount of another Kyuubi from the Juubi, just enough to make it not powerful enough for Madara to employ his plan. It was by a very thin margin. If Naruto himself had a quart less of chakra the world would have already been under Madara's control for over 2 decades. Things were looking quite well, but that was when Madara forcefully revived himself by using his control over Obito to force him to use the Gedan Rin Tensei no Jutsu, Outer Path, Samsara of Heavenly Life technique and revive him to his original form. With his true body Madara angrily captured all the previous Hokage with the power of his Rinnegan and pulled their souls out with his Kikken no Jutsu, soul absorption technique. With the loss of the previous cage, Naruto was left alone with his feeble power. It was also at that point that Uchiha Sasuke decided to join over with his ancestor. Naruto knew that he stood no chance against the combined power of the 2 eternal Mangekyo Sharingan users and he had to survive to preserve the survival of the world. If Madara managed to kill Naruto he would have gathered more than enough power to use his Moon's Eye plan, and that would mean the end of the human era. There was no way that Naruto or anyone in the allied forces could allow that to happen, so there was only one priority in everyone's minds at that point: get Uzumaki Naruto off the battlefield. Against the power of the Uchiha, many people were slaughtered while Naruto made his escape. The Uzumaki didn't know most of them, so that saved him part of the guilt, but 2 people died at that point that changed Naruto forever. Haruno Sakura and Hyuga Hinata had both sacrificed themselves for the sake of their love and leader. From that point on there was no way that peace could ever be reached between Naruto and Madara, the world was too small for both of them to live. After that Naruto was promoted to the supreme commander of the shinobi forces and had been leading his men into battle ever since. It was 10 years ago that Naruto had finally killed Uchiha Sasuke. The vision of the Elder Toad was very true. In the end Naruto did end up fighting with Sasuke and it was a death battle. It was clear to Naruto that they could never go back to what they once were, and he would kill Sasuke for the lives of the many men that had been sacrificed because of him. Naruto was no longer fighting for personal revenge for reasons, he was fighting for the very survival of the shinobi and humans alike, no matter what the Uchiha needed to die. With the full power of the Kyuubi and the chakra he absorbed from the Juubi, Naruto wiped Sasuke of the face of the earth with a full power Bijudama. It was a long and arduous battle, but Naruto was victorious in the end. Uchiha Sasuke was nothing more than a burnt crater on the face of the earth, and there was only one more Uchiha left in the world. In the midst of the largest forest of Hai no Kuni was a large crater that used to be Konohagakure no Sato. It had been made by a rampage by Uchiha Madara himself 5 years ago, and no one had even bothered to clean the area of the debris. The area had become known as a place of bad omen, and many people tend to avoid the entire forest, so the place had become one of the rare quiet places Naruto could find in a distressed world. In the past 5 years, whenever he had time Naruto would teleport to the place where the place his home once stood using his father's Hiraishin no Jutsu and clean the place by himself. He would never use any of his clones to help him because it was a hobby that he didn't want to finish so quickly. Whenever Naruto would come to the large crater and clear the area of the debris and dust, he would find the slightest bit of solace from his heavy responsibility, and it kept him sane. "Hey 2-chan," muttered Naruto in his mid-30s as he planted some seeds in the soil of the crater. "How are you and Ka-chan up in heaven?" Naruto would always talk to the previous Hokage by himself whenever he would visit the area, but mostly he would only talk to his father. The Hokage monument was totally destroyed, but the mountain that once housed them was still left slightly standing, so Naruto would view it as a monolith with spirit. Naruto would never talk about the war or his hardships to his father, he would only strike casual conversations that he would have loved to share with his father if he was still alive. "I got another couple of confessions again this week," exclaimed Naruto with a smile that was not unlike the one he used in his youth, which was a great relief to his own conscience. He didn't want to become a sulker and emotion reek like many people under his command. They were pretty cute, but they were too shy, and that kind of put me off. The most power man in the shinobi forces had never had a steady girlfriend in the past 20 years. Most knew why. He just could get over the fact that the woman who loved him and the woman he loved died for his sake. Naruto doesn't think about Hinata and Sakura nearly as much anymore, and that was a good sign, but everyone including Naruto himself knew that the two girls would always be in his heart no matter how much time have passed. "I am not bragging, but I have gotten even better looking than you 2-chan," said Naruto with a chuckle as he started to plant his next seed. At the age of 36 Naruto was basically a clone of his late father. They had the same eyes, hair, facial structure and even body shape. It surprised Naruto as he grew as he tended to take from his mother more than his father in his youth, but apparently that was not true, although he still shared his Uzumaki chakra with his mother. Naruto was happy that he looked like his father and mother, it made him feel as though they were living on inside him. "And even you have to admit it, I have a cooler Haori than you," muttered Naruto as he concentrated on his planting. As the supreme commander of the Shinobi forces, Naruto had to dress more conspicuously than others, and he had focused the design of his uniform like his father's. Being true to his home, Naruto wore the standard Konoha Jounin uniform under his Haori, which was somewhat like his father's, but it had blue waves on the bottom instead of flames, and it read Supreme Commander instead of the Yondaime Hokage. "It is time," Naruto muttered a familiar voice from within Naruto, just as the man was finished planting the very last seed it needed for the crater. After 5 years of cleaning up Naruto had finally finished, and in a few years the forest would be back to what it once was. "I can feel the Zetsu's coming already, you have about 3 minutes left." "Okay, thanks Kurama." It has become clear to Naruto that with only 5% of his men left, there was no way that he could win the war, so in order to defeat Madara, he had to cheat. The Supreme Commander had been working on one Fuinjutsu for the last 19 years, and he had finally finished it 1 year ago. It had always been a backup plan of a sort for Naruto, and he never hoped that he would end up using it, but now it was the only chance of survival for humankind, so there was no choice in the matter. Naruto had created a seal that would allow him to travel back in time. He would go back to the era of the warring clans and kill Madara before he reached the peak of his power. The Uzumaki had calculated the amount of chakra he would need to go back so many years, and if his calculations were correct, then he would have to use all the chakra of the Kyuubi as well as the power he gained from the Juubi. It would burn out Kurama and kill him temporarily, but he would be back in a few years in the current time. That means that Naruto could only go back with his own personal chakra, and that would leave him at a huge power down. In the 2 decades of war, Naruto had grown to be the most powerful man in the lands except for Madara, and his personal skills were definitely in the league of the previous Hokage, even without his Bijuu chakra, so he should be able to defeat a much weaker Uchiha Madara back in time. "Remember what I told you before, don't worry about screwing up that past too much, no matter what your existence is, absolute nothing you do will cause you to never be born," said the ancient being with a serious tone. "Even though you are sent back in time, you will still have the tiniest traces of me and the Juubi in you, so think of it as you are not a part of the natural process and more as a being that is outside of the world existence. The Naruto that will be born from where you will go will no longer be you." Naruto sighed and nodded. "I know Kurama, you are turning into a nagging father." The Kyuubi chuckled and shook his head. "Even after so many years you still enjoy pissing me off." The commander chuckled back and looked up at the sky. "Well, of course." The Bijuu closed his eyes inside the large garden that was his cage at the moment. Honestly kid, it has been great knowing you. The air of the old man that I once knew. Naruto smiled and nodded back. It was truly an honor, Kurama. I know we will probably not see each other ever again, but I promise you that I will not fail this mission," said the blonde man with a hardened expression on his face. "I will go back and I will kill Uchiha Madara." Kurama chuckled and nodded back as well. "You better kid, give him an extra hard kick to the face, okay?" The Uzumaki laughed a little. "You got it." Naruto walked to the middle of the crater where Konoha once stood and stopped at the very center of the area. Unknown to anyone else in the world, Naruto had set it up an extremely intricate web of seals inside the crater of Konoha, and it spanned even into the forest because of its size. All the hidden seals took Naruto almost 2 decades to finish, and it was his pride and joy as an Uzumaki Fuinjutsu specialist. Naruto could probably be the Uzumaki with the deepest knowledge in Fuinjutsu, yet even the previous leader of his clan wouldn't have been able to create such a complicated web of seals, or so according to the Kyuubi. The commander suppressed the sadness in his heart about being forever separated from all his friends in his time, but it had to be done. Naruto gripped his fists and flared his chakra to full power, causing the surrounding area to shake from the vast amount of chakra. Naruto had mastered the Kyuubi and the Juubi's chakra as much as he could in the past 2 decades, and now he could use it as if it was his own natural chakra. But the utilization of the mass chakra of the Kyuubi and part of the Juubi, the ground began to shake from the pressure being pushed out of Naruto's body. A familiar cloak of golden chakra flared from Naruto's body as he cried out fiercely into the sky. "Hey-ay-ay!" cried the Uzumaki as he chakra created a pillar of light that pierced the heavens themselves. "Let's do this, Naruto," cried the Kyuubi as he himself pushed all of his chakra through the veins of his host. Naruto felt his power hit its maximum level, so he was ready to use his seal. The man placed his 2 hands onto the ground, which was the epicenter of the web of seals. With a simple exhale, Naruto began to force his chakra into the web of seals, and instantly the entire area of the crater and the High no Kuni forest were covered by a bright light. The mass amount of light was the exhaust of Naruto and his Bijuu chakra burning through the seals, and soon the light was like a second sun on the ground. Naruto felt as if his body was being ripped apart by the sheer pressure he was exerting, and soon there was an upward force that lifted him into the air. Just a little more and Naruto," cried Kurama as his voice was becoming distorted. The Uzumaki forced the last few drops of power through his body as hard as he could, and suddenly his body was propelled up to the sky like meteor. True to his name, Naruto created a maelstrom of blinding light in the sky that cleared the 100-mile radius of any clouds. The earth was shaking from the power being channeled through its domain, and it kept on a huge portion of the earth would be completely destroyed. Then suddenly there was nothing. Everything was quiet, the forest was still standing, and the seeds Naruto planted were still in place. But Naruto was gone. It has been a long time since the last time Naruto was knocked unconscious by something. The last time it happened was at the end of the fight with Madara. But Naruto would never forget the peculiar feeling of waking up with a weird headache that would last for the day. Normally Naruto would lay to rest for a while longer to help him his headache, but seeing that he just used a seal that he took 20 years to make, he was far too anxious to just lay there. Naruto forced himself to open his eyes, and the first thing he saw was that the sky was extremely blue, there was not a cloud in sight. Underneath his body were no longer the loose dirt of the crater, but it was a layer of soft and long grass. How long has it been since Naruto last felt the crisp feeling of laying on grass? He couldn't remember, but he knew that it was once his favorite thing to do back in Konoha. Moving his hands just very little, Naruto could feel that he didn't have any strength left. He had used up almost all of his chakra and was very weak. Thankfully Naruto had thought about this situation, so he had brought back with him in his body seals, a chakra replenishing seal. The Uzumaki placed several of them on his body a few hours ago, and they would automatically activate whenever he would be low on chakra, and he could already feel them kicking in as he felt his reserves fill up gradually. "Man, that was a rough ride," muttered Naruto to himself as he forced his body to sit up. The commander looked down and saw that his clothes were mostly intact, but his haori was completely ripped up and could barely stay on his body. Naruto sighed and ripped the remains off his body and brushed the dust that had collected on his Jounin uniform, which was surprisingly still perfectly fine. He then checked all the seals he had placed on his body, and he found that they were all intact, meaning that all the things he brought back with him were still with him, which was certainly good news. Looking around the area, Naruto couldn't help but feel a sense of nostalgia. It was the Konoha forest, but in this time it was just a nameless forest in the middle of High no Kuni. Naruto smiled softly to himself as he looked down at his hands. "Wow, it really worked, I am really back in time," thought the man silently as he felt more hopeful than he had been for the last 20 years. Naruto had thought of a thorough plan of action before he left, and the first step was to locate where the Uzumaki clan was. It had become clear to Naruto that Madara had fostered so much animosity for the world, mainly for the Senju clan, so Naruto would try to prevent that from ever happening. He would join the Uzumaki clan and work as a part of their system. Hopefully that would allow him to meet the Uchiha clan and give him the chance to kill Uchiha Madara for the world and his revenge. Naruto stood up with a sigh and smiled a little when he heard the sounds of a creek near him. "So thirsty," muttered the man as he staggered over to the small river and knelt down in front of it. The Uzumaki moaned a little in relief and pleasure as he drank the cold and fresh water. Back in his own time, the water of the many rivers in Hai no Kuni had mostly been contaminated by the war, so it tasted horrible, and it often made Naruto sick to his stomach, so the clear water in this time was a real treat to the powerful man. After having his fill of water, Naruto sighed and wiped his lips dry with his hand, but that was also when he looked down at the water. What is this?" muttered the man in shock as he saw his reflection. The person who looked back at Naruto was not who he was when he left. Naruto now looked like when he was 20 years old. The difference was quite clear. He no longer had the wrinkles he collected in his many hours of stress, and he wasn't as tanned as he was. This was certainly unexpected. Going back in time should only affect the surroundings around him. His physical body should have no changes to it all. Maybe it was caused by using up all of his Bijuu chakra at once. Naruto started to chuckle. "Well, I can't say I am not happy about this." Suddenly Naruto picked up some rapid footsteps coming towards him from the forest on his right side. Out of habit, Naruto immediately unsealed one of his tri-pronged kunai from his wrist and held it tightly in his hand. But what came out of the forest only a few seconds after was not what he expected. He was expecting an ugly Zetsu to jump at him, but instead he was greeted by the sight of a beautiful woman with a shade of red hair that reminded Naruto of his mother. "Look out!" cried the young woman as she fell towards Naruto's direction. Out of reflex, Naruto stepped forward and caught the woman in his arms, and she was surprisingly light in his arms. Looking down into his arms, Naruto stared into a pair of light purple eyes that looked very innocent and pure. Refocusing his vision, Naruto took in the full image of the woman's face, and he had to admit that she was one of the most beautiful women he had ever seen in his life. Her face is quite angelic and she had a sense of majestic on her. "Are you alright, miss?" asked Naruto as he slowly placed the woman on her feet. "You're hurt," exclaimed the man as he saw quite a bit of blood seeping through her white clothes. The woman was quite frantic as she tried to pull Naruto away from the area. "You have to leave this area, there are a lot of people coming this way." Naruto's eyes narrowed when he felt many chakra signatures coming their way, and oddly, he could still feel their negative emotions. "What the hell, Kurama? I can't sense Kurama anymore. Why do I still have this power?" Shaking his head clear of the thought, Naruto focused on the incoming group of people who were most likely after the woman behind him. "What are you doing? They will kill you if you don't run," cried the woman, but her voice fell on deaf ears as Naruto's eyes caught sight of a flag that was emerging from the forest. "Uchiha!" cried Naruto in anger as he flared his powerful chakra, which had been partially revived. As soon as the word left Naruto's lips, tens of people leaped out of the tree line with weapons in their hands. They all had one thing that Naruto hated more than anything in his life: the Sharingan. They all had the same red eyes that the man who killed almost everyone close to him had, and that alone was enough to put Naruto into a state of untamed anger. "Kill her!" cried the apparent leader of the Uchiha group as they pointed over at the woman. The woman staggered back and was about to leave Naruto since they were after her anyway, but she stopped when she felt the man flare his aura of chakra. The woman was in shock. She had never felt such a powerful chakra signature before, except for Senju Hashirama, who she grew up with. Naruto silently threw his tri-pronged kunai up to the area where the Uchihas were jumping down and gripped his fists. "Hiraishin no jutsu," muttered the man as he vanished from sight and killed the first 5 Uchiha on the spot. The other watched on in shock as their leader and teammates were suddenly killed, and they themselves were frozen in shock from the palpable killer intent that filled the area. Naruto used his momentum to mercilessly kill whoever was in his way, and blood was aimlessly splurting all over the forest. The woman watched on in shock and amazement as Naruto effortlessly cut down one of the Uchiha's battle units. "Putin. Atsugai." Naruto pushed his hands out and instantly, a blast of potent wind ripped apart the lands in front of him. The rest of the Uchihas close to the man were blasted to shreds by the sharp and heavy wind. None of them survived the next second of their lives. The wind carried on to destroy a large part of the forest, and at that point Naruto was struck out of the stupor and felt a little guilt about damaging the land he loved so much. A stabbing pain suddenly struck Naruto's head as he fell to the ground. "Erg." The woman was still in shock from the man's power, but she ran up to him and knelt down. "Hey, are you alright?" Naruto was in extremely pain as he felt a great headache, but he forced his eyes open. "Who are you?" strained out the man weakly. The woman had a look of concern on her face as she placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "I am Uzumaki Mito," muttered the woman as she lifted Naruto and supported his weight with her shoulders. "You saved me, so I will save you, don't worry." I'll get you some help. The end. The past 20 years have been rather difficult for the Uzumaki clan. Since their existence, the Uzumakis have been known as some of the most powerful people throughout the elemental nations, but that fact had started to dwindle down into fiction. The names of their close relative, the Senju clan, and their own rivals, the Uchiha clan, have both grown more famous than the Fuinjutsu masters of elemental nations. It was a shame that the latest generation of the Uzumaki clan were not as talented or powerful as their Senju and Uchiha counterparts. The names of Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama had become legends in the shinobi world and were both known as the two most powerful ninja in the lands. Their fame and glory had clouded over the names of the Uzumakis, and that was an embarrassment to the latter. The current leader of the Uzumaki is Uzumaki Genryusai, one of the most respected and revered men in the elemental nations. The aged shinobi had resigned into being advisors to the younger generation just like his Uchiha and Senju counterparts, but he was silently angry at the lack of power his children had. Genryusai originally had 3 children, 2 older boys and 1 girl. The boys were born as twins, and Genryusai had high hopes for them, unfortunately they perished on the battlefield a few years ago. Then there was his little girl. Definitely the apple in his eye. Genryusai never wanted to train his daughter to be a kunoichi, as he wanted only peace and happiness for his little girl, but since she was the only heir to the clan after her brother's death, Genryusai had no choice but to train her as well. Uzumaki Mito had a lot more talent than her brothers, and she took her father's teachings like a fish in water, but she was still not strong enough. Maybe it was because of the fact that Fuinjutsu weren't really meant to be used in battle, and that was why the Uzumaki were not as demanded for mission when compared to the battle-hardwired Uchiha and Senju. But there is one thing that the Uzumaki have that the other 2 clans don't, it is their longevity and supreme stamina. The bodies of the Uzumaki members were a lot more durable and fitted during battle and training, and that alone put a lot of hope in Genryusai's mind. With the powerful bodies gifted to them, Uzumakis should be some of the most battle-orientated people in the lands, and one day they would surpass even their relative, the Senju clan, and the Uchiha clan. Currently the Uzumaki clan made a home out of a large island just on the edge of Hai no Kuni. A place where they would have natural barriers of water. It was a relatively new sanctuary for the Uzumakis as they have only relocated to the island 10 years ago, but so far it had done them well, and people had hoped that their home would last for a long while. At the highest point of the island was a large hill named Tenkei, Heaven's Blessing, the home to the leader of the clan, and where the main library was built. It had a panoramic view of the village on the island as well as the ocean, and it was the favorite place of Uzumaki Genryusai. The old man rather enjoyed serving tea with his wife and daughter in the afternoon in their large backyard and watching the sakura blossoms cascade to the ground during Hanami season. I wonder where Mito-chan is right now, she hasn't sent anything back about her position yet. Muttered Genryusai as he sat in his regular chair staring into his private sakura forest. The old man had sent Mito out on a mission a week ago and he was growing worried since she hasn't responded to any sort of contact. It was simple information gathering mission that should have only taken the young woman 3 days to complete, but it has already been a week. The father was getting distressed and wanted to send someone out to find HS daughter and bring her home. I'm sure she is fine, said a kind and gentle voice next to the leader of the clan. Mito-chan is a strong girl and I know that she will come back soon. Genryusai smiled over at the elderly woman beside him and nodded. Well, she is our daughter after all. The elderly woman was the wife of Genryusai and one of the kindest person one would find in the world. Uzumaki Retsu was a medical kunoichi back when she was young, and she was one of the foremost experts in extracting poison from the body. The woman had saved thousands of lives in her lifetime, including her husband's 40 years ago, and she was one of the most respected kunoichi in the world. Retsu smiled back at her husband and reached out to hold his hand. So have you come to a decision about Mito-chan's marriage into the Senju clan? Genryusai sighed and tightened his grip around his wife's hand. I still don't want to let her go. Mito-chan is strong, and I know she would be able to lead our people. Said the man with conviction in his voice. I don't want to just send her off to the Senju clan just so our clans can be closer. The old lady smiled and nodded. And you don't want to let her darling daughter go, right? The leader smiled softly and looked over at his wife. You really know me better than anyone. Retsu laughed lightly and leaned into her soulmate. I feel the same way too. Mito-chan is our daughter, not some bargaining chip. Said the old lady with pride in her eyes. If the Senju clan really respects our blood ties, then they would be close to us without the need of a political marriage. Genryusai nodded. I agree, muttered the man before he sighed. But how does Mito-chan feel about this? She grew up with Hashirama, does she want to marry him? Retsu sighed also and shook her head. No, said the woman with a smile. Mito-chan grew up with Hashirama-kun like siblings, she thinks of him like an older brother, nothing more. Genryusai nodded in understanding. It is no mystery to most people that Hashirama-kun had liked Mito-chan for a while now, but it is only one-sided. Mito-chan has no romantic feelings for him. Genyusai sighed as he sipped from his cup of tea. Then it is decided I will turn down the marriage proposal. Announced the leader with a small smile on his face. Our daughter will marry for herself, not for the clan. Retsu smiled and nodded. Yes. Where am I? Thought Naruto silently as he slowly regained his consciousness. The man felt terrible, his body was sore, his head was still aching, and his throat felt extremely dry. Naruto could still remember what happened before very clearly, but he still couldn't figure out why he was suddenly struck with a horribly painful headache. Nothing of the sort had ever happened to Naruto before, it was as if an extremely sharp needle had pierced his brain and was twisting and turning inside his head. It may have been the most painful experience of his life. The headache still affecting Naruto a little and he didn't want to open his eyes yet, so he used his nose to detect what was around him. Even after being separated from the Kyuubi, Naruto seemed to have kept a small bit of his power. He could still use his strong sense of smell and sense negative emotions if his fight with the Uchiha indicated anything. Whiffing his nose around a little, Naruto figured out that he was still in a forest. He would never forget the smell of the trees and earth, but there was something in the air that he just couldn't place. It was an aroma that reminded him of sakura blossoms with a hint of roses. Naruto had no idea what it was. Man, I am so thirsty. Naruto grunted as he moved his arm and tried to push himself into a sitting position. The man struggled for a little while, but he sat up fully and started to rub his eyes. Slowly the man parted his eyelids and tried to see where he was. Naruto ignored the slight sting in his eyes and waited for them to be focused after taking in the light. "Oh, you're awake," said a rather relieved voice just a few feet away from Naruto, and the man looked over to see the same woman he came across back then. It connected to the man that the wonderful smell early was from this woman, and she was the one who took care of him when he fell unconscious from his sudden headache. But then something dawned on Naruto. The woman told him her name just before he passed out: Uzumaki Mito. The first time Naruto had heard of Uzumaki Mito was in one of his early days in the academy. Iruka-sensei was teaching the class about the history of the village and the previous Hokage. It was then that Naruto learnt that the wife of the Shodai was Uzumaki Mito. It was strange that he didn't pick up, they had the same last name back then. Then Naruto's mother had told him that she had met with Mito when she first arrived in Konoha. The elderly Uzumaki at the time was like a mother figure to Kushina. Naruto looked back up at the young and beautiful woman in front of him and couldn't help but feel surreal in his mind. Uzumaki Mito had always been an old lady with grey hair, but the real Mito in front of him was glowing with life and had vibrant red hair that Naruto adored. Mito smiled and knelt down in front of Naruto. "Are you alright? That was quite an experience you had." Naruto was broken out of his stupor and managed a small nod. "Yes, I am fine, thank you so much for taking care of me," said the man with a smile. The young woman just waved him off with her smile still directed at him. "No problem at all, it is the least I can do after you saved me from those Uchiha," said Mito with a grin on her face. "And I can't just leave another Uzumaki behind, can I?" The blonde man was surprised and looked up at the woman. "How did you know I am in Uzumaki?" Mito smirked. "I may not be one of the best chakra sensors out there, but I am good enough to tell that you have chakra that belongs to the Uzumaki clan," claimed the girl with pride in her voice. "So did 2chan send you here to back me up?" Naruto was seeing where the conversation was going and shook his head. "No, I was actually on a trip to find the Uzumaki clan," said the man as the girl was in turn surprised. "I am in Uzumaki, but I have been living with my parents this whole time and I have never actually seen our home." This was a cover-up that Naruto had thought up before he traveled back in time. He had done some research and found that some Uzumaki had broken off contact with the clan to live as normal civilians, so it would be the perfect cover-up for him. The girl was surprised and sat down on the ground. "Really?" muttered Mito as she tilted her head in thought. "I know about some members that have broken off contact with the clan, but I've actually never met one before." The man was delighted at how pleasant and carefree Mito was being. "Well, I am one of them." Mito nodded and smiled. "So where are your parents now? Are they thinking of coming back to the clan?" Naruto's expression darkened and shook his head. "My parents are dead, they were both killed by the Uchiha clan," muttered the man angrily as Mito's eyes widened. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring that up," apologized Mito with her eyes to the side. Naruto shook his head of his negative emotions and smiled at Mito. "It's alright, Mito-san, I should be sorry for being angry," said the man as the girl looked back at him. "It is still kind of a sore subject for me." Mito shook her head. "No, I completely understand." The two Uzumakis shared a moment of silence as neither of them knew what to say after all that. Mito was twiddling around with a blade of grass as she looked down at the ground, trying to come out with a new topic to talk about. Naruto on the other hand was taking the time to really look at the woman in front of him. Mito was really a beautiful girl in his eyes, her face was adorable and angelic. Her red-haired cascaded down to the small of her back and looked very silky to touch. Then there was the elegant white kimono on her, it made her look perfect. Naruto's eyes suddenly widened. "Mito-san, are your own wounds treated?" asked the man, remembering her wound as he saw the blood on her kimono. Mito smiled and nodded. "Yes, I am a novice medical kunoichi and I healed myself." The male Uzumaki nodded and looked around the forest. "Then we should leave this forest soon." The Uzumaki heiress sighed. "That is the problem, this forest is close to the main base of the Uchiha clan and if we get caught by them we are done for." Naruto's eyes widened in shock. "This is where the Uchiha's base is, so Uchiha Madara should be somewhere here," thought the man as an involuntary surge of survival instincts ran through his body. Being so close to the Uchiha made Naruto feel on the edge. After spending 20 years trying to survive the onslaught of Madara, Naruto had grown a little wary of being close to the man. Madara was truly powerful back in his time, being the Jinchuriki of the Juubi granted him godly powers, and Naruto shivered at the thought of the power of the Rakuto Sennin. The Uzumaki could very go and kill the younger Madara right then, but he held himself back. Without Kurama and his portion of the Juubi's chakra, Naruto was significantly weakened compared to his real self, and he did not know enough of his own power yet to take on Uchiha Madara. "So the Uchiha are out looking for you?" asked Naruto at the young woman. Mito nodded seriously. "Yes, I was sent on a mission to gather some intelligence from the Uchiha and it seems that they discovered me on the job," explained the girl with a little stress. "It seems that they know of my true identity as the heiress of the Uzumaki clan and they wanted to either capture me or kill me." Naruto nodded. "It is safe to assume that with our clan being so close with the Senju clan, it is only natural that the Uchiha would want to use our heiress as leverage against the Senju," grunted out the man with a bit of anger in his voice. "Those damn Uchihas will do anything to get their way." The Uzumaki heiress nodded solemnly before she looked back at the man. "So are you feeling rested enough to travel now? We need to find a way out of here." The blonde man nodded and stood up. "I'm ready to go," replied the man as he started to stretch his tendons and muscles. Mito nodded with a smile. "Great, let's go." As Naruto ran alongside Mito inside the forest, he couldn't help but feel nostalgic seeing the giant trees around him. It reminded him of the Forest of Death and the Chunin exams. It was surreal to think that it has already been over 20 years since then. Naruto no longer held any friendship for Sasuke, but he still treasured his memories with Sakura and the rest of Rookie 9. Over the years all of Naruto's childhood friends perished in the war, none of them survived. Naruto sighed inwardly at the thought of his friends after his mission in the past. It was likely that all of them wouldn't even be born. "I think we are going in the right direction," said Mito, breaking Naruto out of his thoughts. "It is about sundown and we need to head west, so all we need is to follow the sun." Naruto nodded in agreement. "Yes," muttered the man. "So the Uzumaki clan is located in the south of here?" Mito nodded and looked back with a smile. "That's right, I forgot you had never been home before," said the girl with a bright smile. "We have relocated to an island of the coast of Hai no Kuni. We moved there 10 years ago and it has been great." Naruto smiled at the thought of going to the home of his ancestors. "It sounds great, I look forward to seeing it for the first time." The two Uzumakis continued to travel in silence through the forest and they were almost at the edge of the place. So far there were no signs of movement around them and everything was going very smoothly, but Naruto was growing dubious. The way out of the forest was a walk out of the park, it was too easy. The man closed his eyes and stretched out his senses to chart out a mental map of his surroundings. True to his suspicion, Naruto sensed a few signatures of negative emotions trailing behind them. They were about 100 feet back and they were deliberately trying to be discreet. Naruto narrowed his eyes and acted like nothing happened before looking across a little at Mito. "Mito-san, is the location of the Uzumaki clan a secret?" asked Naruto softly. Mito was a little surprised at the question and just nodded. "Apart from us Uzumakis and the Senju clan, no one really knows of our location." Naruto nodded and inwardly sighed at the trusting Mito. The girl was still young and inexperienced, that much was very obvious. He could have been a converted Uzumaki who was spying on them for other clans. Mito was far too trusting and that was definitely not a good sign for the girl. But back to Naruto's main issue, it was safe to assume that the Uchiha were purposely letting them escape in order to shadow them. They wanted to know where the Uzumaki clan were located. "Okay Mito-san, don't act any differently," muttered Naruto as he continued to run forward with his clan heiress. "There are about 10 Uchihas following us 100 feet back." Mito's eyes widened but managed to hold back any sudden movements. "They are purposely letting us go in order to follow behind us. They want to find out where our clan is located." Mito was angry that she did not notice and discreetly grunted in acknowledgement. "Okay, so we should confront them now." Naruto shook his head very little. "No, while that may end their pursuit, it may also attract the attention of other Uchihas near them. We have to get rid of them as quickly and silently as we can." The heiress nodded in agreement. "Alright, but I am not so much of a fighter myself," said the girl a little shamefully. "I am more of a medic and stealth kunoichi." The blonde man smiled kindly at the girl. "Well, this is where I come in, don't worry Mito-san, just leave everything to me." Naruto knew exactly how quickly himself and Mito were moving, and the Uchiha were doing their best to stay at a uniform length away from them, so it was safe to reason that the Uchiha were traveling at the same speed. There was about 100 feet distance between the Uzumaki and their pursuers, and based on their speed, it would take them about 10 seconds to clear 100 feet. Naruto smiled to himself as he channeled some more chakra to his feet and readied his Hiraishin Jutsu Shiki. Over the years Naruto had gained complete control over his father's Hiraishin no Jutsu, and he could even plant the Jutsu Shiki through the sole of his feet. So for the next 10 seconds, Naruto planted 5 Jutsu Shikis on the 5 branches he stepped on, and right at the end of those 10 seconds Naruto struck. Mito was shocked to see Naruto suddenly disappear, he was so fast she couldn't see his movements at all. The girl stopped in her tracks and looked backwards at the sight. It was safe to say that she was stunned. It was the same jutsu Naruto had used before to defeat most of the Uchiha, but Mito hadn't seen its true effectiveness. As soon as Mito turned back she saw the sight of Naruto slicing up on all 10 of the Uchiha's jugulars in under a split second. The Uchihas had no chance to even fight back, they didn't even know what hit them. In less than a second they were all cut down like sheep to the slaughter, and all they would have seen was a flash of Naruto's blonde hair. Incredible, muttered Mito in awe at her fellow Uzumaki's power. Naruto was standing over the fallen corpses of the Uchiha with a blank look on his face as he gripped his fists together. That brief use of the Hiraishin no Jutsu allowed Naruto to judge the amount of power he had left. Using the Hiraishin didn't use up any sort of chakra when he was just teleporting himself, but it would show him the capacity of his body and the size of his chakra reserves. So far Naruto concluded that he was left with the chakra of an average cage. It was still plenty to work with, but not nearly as much as what he had back in his time. I need to work on developing a larger reserve, I would need it later on if I am to fight Uchiha Madara. Naruto still had to try out his other jutsu, most importantly his Rasengan and the Kage Bunshin. Naruto was sure that the Rasengan would be no problem at all, seeing that his chakra control should have improved at the loss of part of his chakra, but his Kage Bunshin would probably be halved in number. Having gained so much experience and skills as a shinobi, Naruto would rarely produce mass amount of clones to fight anymore, but he would still use them for training. Losing the ability to use mass amounts of clones would slow his progress down quite a bit. With a sigh Naruto jumped back to his future leader and offered her a smile. "There, let's get going now." Mito was still looking at the man in awe and just nodded a little. "That was amazing," exclaimed the girl with glee. "I've never seen anyone move so fast before." Naruto couldn't help but chuckle at the girl's innocence and happiness, it made him feel nice inside. "Thank you Mito-san, hopefully my skills will allow me back into the clan." The heiress nodded enthusiastically. "I am sure that my two-chan would be delighted to have someone like you in our clan," chirped the girl happily as she hopped a little. "Let's hurry back, I have to introduce you to my two-chan." The end. Ambition of the Uzumaki clan Chapter 3. Naruto had a smile on his face as he sped across a part of the expansive ocean alongside Uzumaki Mito. The young woman was correct, the location of the Uzumaki clan was just off the coast of Hai no Kuni. Naruto could already sense from chakra signatures from where he was. Naruto was happy about going to his official clan home for the first time ever. These people were literally his family. One that he desperately needed when he was a child. The Uzumaki had always wondered about his family when he was an orphan back in Konoha, and he never thought that he would one day actually join the original Uzumaki clan. The masters of Huinjutsu had been destroyed along with their village in the Second Shinobi World War, and Naruto had always been a little angry about it, but now he had a chance to change things. Naruto plans to make the Uzumaki clan the strongest in the elemental nations. A clan that will be more revered and praised than the Uchiha and Senju. The restoration of the Uzumaki clan had been a side goal in Naruto's mind even back in his own time. He wanted to repopulate his lost clan by himself after the war, but there was an easier way. By bringing the Uzumaki clan up to the top of the elemental nations would allow Naruto to go to war with the Uchiha clan, and he would use that to destroy Uchiha Madara before he could ever become so powerful. This would bring a great change to the future, and Naruto knew that perfectly, but it was a needed change. It was clear that the formation of the shinobi villages was a great idea that helped the world a great deal, but Naruto will tweak it a little. Naruto will wipe out the Uchiha clan before the establishment of any village, and that will bring a complete end to the cycle of hatred. "We are almost there Naruto-san," chirped Mito happily as she was very excited to finally return home. Naruto nodded back with a smile on his face. "Yes, I can send some people already." Mito looked over at Naruto and winked. "When we get back, I will introduce you to two-chan," said the girl as Naruto nodded in acknowledgement. I know you are in Uzumaki and you belong here with us, but you still have to be passed by the leader first. That is very understandable," replied Naruto calmly. "I look forward to meeting the leader of our clan." Mito giggled and looked back ahead. 2chan might be a lot different than what you imagine that tends to be the general result of everyone meeting 2chan for the first time. Naruto didn't know what Mito was referring to but nodded either way. Inside his head Naruto was thinking that the leader of his clan would be something like the Sandaime Hokage, an old man with a lifetime of experience to offer his young children. Of course Naruto had heard many things about the Uzumaki leader, Uzumaki Genryusai. Back in his own time Naruto had researched extensively about the past and its people, and the one he paid the most attention to was his ancestor Uzumaki Genryusai. Not much were known about the old Uzumaki leader, but the books did describe him as great leader who had the love and admiration of his people. Naruto held respect for the man just because of that face. His ancestor was a man who cared for his home and family, and that was all Naruto looked for in a leader. In Naruto's eyes, the leader's most important trait is to motivate and encourage his people, as long as he is able to do that strength may not necessarily be needed. Soon the two Uzumakis made it to the main gate of the Uzumaki clan compound, and Naruto was surprised at the enormous size of the structure. Naruto could tell that it was not a regular gate. It had many layers of seals encrusted on its surface, and from what he deduced Naruto found that if one was to try to break the gate with force, the gate would automatically absorb the chakra used by the trespasser and use it to enforce its own defenses. It was truly an impressive gate guarding the home of all Uzumakis. Mito had a smile on her face as she walked up to the gate and placed her hand on some sort of talisman. "I'm home," whispered the young woman as she channeled some chakra through the talisman, and the giant bolts and gears of the gate started to shift. Naruto stood behind Mito with a serious expression on his face as he readied himself for meeting with his clan. "Mito-chan!" shrieked a girl who was no older than Mito as she ran out of the gate as soon as it was opened. Mito smiled brightly at the sight of the other girl and ran towards her with her arms opened. "Asuka-chan!" cried Mito as she hugged her best friend as hard as she could. Asuka was a girl who had the same shade of hair as Mito. The traditional Uzumaki red. She tied her hair into a braided ponytail that reached the top of her back. Naruto mused at the fact that Asuka was dressed like a young cowgirl. She had a peach-colored vest over a pink shirt with blue jeans, and to top it off she had a white cowboy hat on her head. It was certainly not normal for people to dress so conspicuously as a ninja, but it look worked on the girl, and Naruto thought she was quite cute. "Mito Abachan!" cried another voice as a small boy no older than the age of 10 ran out of the gate. "You're home." Mito pulled away from Asuka and desperately reached to wrap the boy in her arms. "Ren-chan!" cried Mito as a few drops of tears escaped her eyes. Naruto smiled a little at the sight. It seems that Mito has been desperately missed during her mission. While he looked at the young boy Naruto couldn't help but feel a little nostalgic. The boy's face reminded him a little of Konohamaru. The boy was clearly younger than Naruto's surrogate brother, but their facial structures were a little similar. The Uzumaki boy had a shade of red hair that was like Mito's, but his was a little darker and was spiky as well. Asuka wiped the tears from her eyes. "What took you so long, Mito-chan? We were all so worried," asked the girl as a crowd began to emerge from behind the gate. Most of them were just the civilians of the clan, and they were happy that their future leader made it home safe. Mito looked up at her friend as she cradled the boy's head against her chest. "I had some problems during my mission so I was late," said the girl a little sheepishly. "I'm sorry for worrying you all." Naruto had widened eyes as he gazed upon the growing crowd of people behind the gate. They almost all had red hair. Naruto felt surreal thinking that everyone in front of him were Uzumakis. A clan of people who had all perished during his own time. Naruto had only seen a few Uzumakis in his life, but most of them except his mother were kind of weird the moment he met them. He had never just met a normal Uzumaki before. Looking into the crowd with his sentimental eyes, Naruto felt happy. These were his people, his family. These people shared the same blood as him. They were related. The happy and carefree faces of the Uzumakis made Naruto think of his days back in Konoha when it was still peaceful. Their smiles were very similar. "Your home," said an emotional voice that sliced through all other chatter. "Mito-chan." Mito looked over, with tears in her eyes, at the origin of the voice, and she saw her parents standing there with relieved smile of their own. "2chan, Ka-chan," cried the heiress to the clan as she ran forward and leaped into the comfort of her parents' arms like a little girl. Genryusai and Retsu happily accepted their daughter into their arms and hugged her lovingly. "I knew you would make it home," muttered the leader of the clan with a smile on his face. "I was so very worried, but I knew you would come back to us." Retsu smiled as her daughter nodded into their arms. "Yes, welcome home, Mito-chan." Naruto smiled at the sight with happiness with a hint of amusement. The Uzumaki clan was certainly very different from the Uchiha clan. It was amazing that the heiress of the clan could still be such a little girl in front of so many people in public. No to mention that the leaders of the village looked more like an old retired couple who would rather play with grandchildren than to lead their clan into greatness. While it may seem absurd and ridiculous to other clans, Naruto would his clan's affectionate nature to each other to be wonderful and warm. After all, a clan or village should be a huge family that cares for each other. A strong bond between members of the clan would benefit its power more than any sort of training could bring. Genryusai's eyes finally landed on Naruto. The old man had noticed the young man standing before him a few minutes ago, but he decided to enjoy his reunion with his daughter before he talked to the mysterious young man. And who might this young man be? Asked Genryusai as he led everyone's attention to the blonde man. Naruto was surprised at the sudden attention to him and was immediately brought out of his stupor. "Hello sir," said the young man politely with a smile on his face. Mito pulled back from her embrace with her parents and smiled. "This is Uzumaki Naruto, he was the one who saved me on the mission." People in the area were all surprised that the blonde man was in Uzumaki and more shocked that he saved their heiress on her mission. Asuka and Ren both looked at Naruto with appreciation and smiled at him kindly for saving their precious best friend and aunt. Retsu smiled when she sensed the man's chakra and found that he was in face in Uzumaki. Only their own clan members would have such peculiar chakra. Genryusai walked closer to Naruto with his thin eyes locked into the young man's own azure orbs. "Uzumaki Naruto?" Naruto nodded with a blank look on his face. "Hi." The leader of the Uzumakis nodded before he cracked a smile. "Well, please come in and let me treat you to a cup of tea, we have a lot to discuss." The blonde Uzumaki nodded his head. "Of course sir." For the first time in his life Naruto set foot into a place where it belonged solely to his family and nobody else. While it may not have been as glorious and prosperous as Konoha was back in his own time, it was near perfection in his eyes. This was what he yearned to see. Children in the streets walking along with their parents happily while eating some treat. The general mood of the village was happy and festive, something Naruto had not seen for over 20 years. Very much like Konoha, there were many stands and stores open for daily customers of the village and they have Naruto a huge sense of nostalgia. He could smell the delightful aroma of steamed buns and grilled squid in the air, the soft sound the wind through trees around him, and the peculiar scent of the ocean seeping from the outskirts of the village. The place was disturbingly like Konoha, and Naruto felt a lump in his throat as he walked through the busy and happy street with his ancestors. Just seeing these people gave Naruto hope and encouragement that he could really change the future. He needed to change the future. Naruto will never allow Uchiha Madara to construct his evil plot again, he would die before he would allow the Uchiha's plan to come to fruition. It was the smiles and laughter of people that he needed to protect. Even after so many years of war and violence, Naruto believed that true peace is ever possible, and he will achieve it. Mito, who was walking next to her mother, looked on at Naruto with wonder. She had just met the man less than a day ago, and he had already made a huge impact in her life. Without Naruto saving her from the forest, Mito shuddered at the thought of being captured by the Uchiha. The man had saved her life, and she would make sure that he would have a place in his home. Retsu looked over at her daughter before she wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "Are you alright, Mito-chan?" Mito nodded and smiled over at her mother. "Yes, Ka-chan, I am just tired." Retsu nodded while knowing that there was something else bothering her daughter. The matriarch sighed inwardly as she continued to walk towards the main office of her husband's. As a kunoichi of over 30 years, Retsu could read people very well, and she saw that the young man walking in front of her was hiding something. Retsu was quite sure that the man had no hostile intent towards them, but that did not stop her from being a little dubious about his character. Genryusai looked ahead and saw that they were nearly at his office. "We are here, Naruto-san." Naruto looked over at the man, momentarily out of his good time of looking around the village, and nodded. "Hi," said the young man with more happiness than he had before, which the old man had noticed. The leader of the Uzumaki smiled at the young man. "Are you having a good time just looking around?" The blonde nodded with a happy smile on his face. "Yes, it really has been a while since I have been in such a happy place," said Naruto with a sense of somber undertone that Genryusai found familiar. It is refreshing to see that some places still have peace in times of turmoil. Genryusai found that the emotions in Naruto's eyes were really, and he was slight more at peace. "We try very hard to keep our peaceful lifestyle afloat, but that is becoming more and more difficult in these times." The group of Uzumakis walked into a large building with traditional Japanese design. It was the size of the Hokage building back in Konoha, but this was much less like a military headquarters, it was more like a normal large mansion for some rich folk. Naruto was delighted by the excess amount of sakura trees that decorated the perimeter of the large building in a parallel pattern. He had always loved the sight and smell of sakura trees, they made him feel at peace. Naruto followed his future leader strictly as they passed by some guards who were guarding the building with some serious facade on their face, which made Naruto feel a little familiar, seeing that he had grown used to being in a militaristic environment. The group of Uzumakis trekked up some impressive wooden stairs with its own guards, and after another minute of traveling, they finally made it to the main office of the Uzumaki leader. It was quite a grand office in Naruto's opinion. It had a large double door that had intricate designs of various whirlpools on them, and when opened it revealed a room that was chiseled out of marble, literally. The floor was completely forged out of marble with black and white patterns, while the walls were made out of several large stones of iron, covered with black marble plating. The shelves on the sides of the room also held impressive collections of antiques and art pieces. Overall the room was fitting for a man like Uzumaki Genryusai. Naruto stood in front of Genryusai's desk as the leader claimed his usual seat. "I must thank you for saving my daughter, Naruto-san." The blond man smiled and shook his head lightly. "It was the right thing to do, Genryusai-sama," replied Naruto humbly. "I would never let a group of shinobi all target one woman." Mito, who was standing beside her father's seat, had a smile on her face. She was still very grateful that Naruto had gone out of his way to save her. Retsu was also glad that the man had saved her daughter, but she needed to know if he had any sort of ulterior motive. The matriarch of the Uzumaki clan moved next to her daughter and husband, getting a full view of the interview. The old man leaned forward and rested his arms on his desk. "Please don't think of me as rude, but before you saved my daughter, did you know who she was?" Mito was shocked at the blatant question of Naruto's motive. "To-chan," exclaimed the girl with a bit of anger. "It's alright," interrupted Naruto before the girl could say any more. "I don't take any offense to that." Mito grunted and crossed her arms together. She was still not happy about how cynical her father was being. "But to answer your question, Genryusai-sana, no, I did not know who Mito-sama was before I rescued her." Genryusai nodded, apparently satisfied. "So, what were you doing in that area of Hai no Kuni in the first place? That area belongs to the Uchiha clan." Naruto's eyes clouded a little at the mention of the Uchiha, but composed himself immediately. "I was actually looking for the Uzumaki clan. I've been looking for this place for quite some time now," said the blonde as Genryusai and Retsu remained emotionless. "I have been searching all over Hai no Kuni and was just passing by that forest when I ran into Mito-sama. Honestly, I didn't even know that I was in Uchiha territory." Retsu finally spoke up. "I can sense that you are indeed in Uzumaki," said the woman as her husband nodded along. "Can you please tell me where you were for the majority of your life? It seems that you are not entirely from the Uzumaki clan." Mito looked over at Naruto and paid close attention as he spoke. "My father was not in Uzumaki, but my mother was and I inherited my Uzumaki chakra from her," explained the man politely to both his leader and his leader's wife. "I have always lived in the outskirts of Mizu no Kuni with my parents until they were killed by several Uchihas a few years ago." Everyone noticed that hate in Naruto's eyes when he mentioned the Uchiha clan. Genryusai nodded. "I am sorry for your parents. No matter what, they are a part of our clan." Naruto nodded before he continued his tale. "I didn't know about our clan when I was younger. My parents had always kept it a secret from me," said the young man as he looked down a little. "I only found out after their death. In their will they told me to return to the clan so I would have a home again." Mito was sympathized her new friend and wanted him to join the Uzumaki's big family. "After that I began to train harder on my skills while I looked for the clan, and that brings me here." Retsu nodded her head, satisfied for the moment. "Many of our clan members had departed the clan several decades ago. It was after a great war, and some of us really wanted to leave to become normal civilians," said the lady with a rather sad voice. "Your mother was undoubtedly one of them. It is unfortunate that even after leaving she was still killed by the Uchiha." Genryusai sighed and felt a little tired already. "So your mother was the one who taught you ninjutsu?" Naruto nodded his head. "Yes, but my father was also a shinobi and he taught me as well, and I gained the power I have now after their deaths." "So you trained yourself for the past few years," suggested Genryusai with a tiny hint of praise. "I assume that your training has worked, seeing that you were able to save my daughter." Mito smiled and nodded rather enthusiastically. "Yeah, I have never seen anyone as fast as Naruto-san before, not even Hashirama or Tobirama are as fast as him," exclaimed the girl as her parents were shocked at the news. "He defeated all 10 Uchihas, chasing me in under a second. I never thought anyone could be so fast." Retsu looked over at Naruto. "So are you a Taijutsu-focused ninja, Naruto-san?" Naruto shook his head negatively. "No, I am a Fuinjutsu user. What Mito-san saw me do early was a result of Fuinjutsu." Genryusai is surprised and pressed on the topic. "Really?" asked the old man as his daughter nodded along. Naruto nodded and looked into his leader's eyes. "Yes, I use a jutsu my parents created. Hiraishin no Jutsu," said the young man, ignoring the looks on the other for the moment. "I know that the Senju clan has a similar jutsu, but I assure you that mine is different." Naruto had seen the Naidame use his form of Hiraishin before, but it was nowhere as fast or versatile as his father's version. Even the Naidame admitted that the Yondaime was much faster than he was. Mito had widened eyes. I have seen Tobirama use something with that name before, but it was nowhere as fast as what you used. Naruto nodded. My Hiraishin no Jutsu is not pure speed, it is a space-time ninjutsu. Said the young man as his audience was once again shocked. By placing a certain jutsu shiki in one place, I open a hole in our dimension and travel to that same place instantaneously. Naruto looked over at Mito. That is what I did before I placed my marker on the branches we stepped on, and when the Uchihas were on the same branch I teleported to my markers to catch them by surprise. Genryusai and Retsu were both surprised by the power the young man had. That is really quite an impressive jutsu, Naruto-san. Said the leader with a small smile on his face. You will definitely make a name for yourself in the future with such power in your possession. Naruto bowed a little at the compliment. Thank you, Genryusai-sama. Retsu stepped forward a little. That being said, Naruto-san, even with all your power and potential you still want to join the clan? Asked the lady seriously. You can easily make yourself a good name out there without the clan, and that would probably allow you more gain as well, why would you want to join us? Naruto smiled. For one reason, I am just fulfilling what my parents wanted of me, they wanted me to join back into the clan, and I want to follow their advice. Said the young man with a look of reminence on his face. Mito stepped forward as well. Is there anything else? Naruto nodded. Secondly, I am quite a family-orientated guy and I want to be with my family. Said the young man sincerely and attracted the smiles of the other in the room. The few years of traveling alone really showed me that I need a home, I want to have a place to return to after a long day. The other noticed the rather solemn look on Naruto's face at the moment. I want to belong to someplace. Mito couldn't stand it anymore. She walked up to Naruto and placed her hands on his shoulders. Will you stay right here with us? Exclaimed the girl with conviction that surprised everyone in the room. You are in Uzumaki and you belong here with your family. Naruto was genuinely touched by the girl's words. The whole backstory was a plot Naruto and Kurama had come up with back in their own time. They needed a background for Naruto to have back in time, so they conjured up a tweaked version of Minato and Kushina's story. Even though the story was not exactly true, Naruto's feelings and emotions were real, and seeing Mito so willing to accept him into the clan really made him happy. Is that really okay? Asked Naruto as he looked at Genryusai. The old man stood and walked over to his wife. Despite everything you are still in Uzumaki and you belong here at home. Said the man with a smile on his face. I gladly accept you back into our clan and you better work harder than the others, you are several years late. Joked the man with a small laugh. Retsu also nodded and smiled. You may not have grown up with us here, but this is still your family home and you should be here with us. Naruto actually felt relief and happiness as he was accepted with open arms. Thank you, said the young man with the most genuine tone he could muster. Mito giggled happily and wrapped her arms around Naruto's right arm. Welcome home, Naruto-san. Naruto had to suppress a tear of joy from escaping his eye. Thank you so much. For the majority of his life, all Naruto ever wanted was a family and he had never had one. All the suppressed feelings bubbled up to the surface of Naruto's mind and even a hardened war general like himself had to hold back the sheer happiness he felt. He was finally truly with his family, he had joined the Uzumaki clan, a place that he was born to be in. I promise I will never let the Uzumaki clan be destroyed. Silently thought the man with a smile on his face. This is my home and I will protect it with my life. The end. Ambition of the Uzumaki clan Chapter 4. It has been many years since Naruto had been so in peace. When the Uzumaki was back in his own time, he was used to living in constant change. Their forces would be in one place in the morning and another by nightfall, and that made Naruto yearn for a stable home. It was depressing to say the least that Naruto had to travel back in time to the era of warring states to find peace in his own life. After speaking with the higher-ups of the Uzumaki clan, Mito had led Naruto over to a home that was at the heart of the village. It belonged to the Uzumaki clan, and Genryusai would rent these homes out to his shinobi to live in. All Naruto had to do for rent was to pay a feeble 2,000 ryo a month, which was basically the pay of a simple B-ranked mission. Naruto was very happy to live in a home again, rather than a camp. He may not look like it, but Naruto enjoyed decorating his own home and making it into his own image. He loved that he finally had a place that he could call his own, and he could alter it much as he wanted without having to move every few hours. Back in his own time, and before his untimely death, Kakashi would often tease Naruto for buying different items whenever they would pass through a town. How are you liking this place? Asked Mito with a smile on her face. Naruto turned his sight back to the beautiful woman and nodded with a smile. I love it. Thank you again, Mito-sama. The red-haired lady placed her hands on her hips and have Naruto look. Just call me Mito, I was never one for formalities. The blonde chuckled and nodded back. Okay then please just call me Naruto. Naruto smiled as he looked around his house. It was of average size, about 1000 sq feet, and it was very efficient. It had 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, 1 full bathroom, and a nice little balcony that had a perfect view of the village. It was much nicer than the run-down little apartment Naruto had back in Konoha and was heaven compared to his tent during the war. The house was still a bit too empty for Naruto's tastes, and he wanted to buy some paintings or decorations to fill the house up. Mito smirked and leaned against a wall. "Are you planning to buy something for your house?" Naruto smirked back and nodded. "You read my mind, Mito, do you know any good stores?" The Uzumaki heiress nodded. "Follow me, Naruto, I'll show you around town." Mito led her new friend through the busy streets of the Uzumaki village and they attracted quite a bit of attention around them. It has been less than a day since Naruto had arrived in the village and the news of him saving the heiress had been floating around town quite quickly. It was unusual for the people to know that a wayward Uzumaki young man had saved the heiress out of chance. In a way they thought that Naruto and Mito were destined to meet somehow. Naruto was not bothered at all by the people around him staring at him blatantly, he had grown used to it when he was the supreme commander of his allied forces. Instead, Naruto focused most of his attention at the lively and happy atmosphere of the village, it made him really happy to see other beings so at peace. People were joking and laughing the streets, and strangers had great courtesy for one another. The cynical population Naruto had grown used to was gone or hadn't been born yet. For the next hour Mito showed Naruto the main stores of the village, not only the furniture stores, but also the supermarkets and general stores. Naruto, by the end of the hour had bought enough to fill his house up quite a bit, luckily for Naruto he had brought back quite a bit of money from his time. Naruto sealed everything he bought into a simple scroll that he sealed into his wrist, it really was very convenient. Mito had her hands entwined behind her back and a smile on her face. "So how are you liking the village so far?" chirped the girl happily. Naruto smiled at Mito's innocence and nodded. "I love it already, it's great to know that I have a home again." The heiress smiled brightly. "That's great," exclaimed the girl gladly. "I'm sure you will like it more and more." It was still a surprise to Naruto that the legendary Uzumaki Mito, one of the strongest kunoichi to ever live, would be such a childish girl at the moment. Mito greatly reminded Naruto of himself when he was younger. A young and eager person who wanted to become a strong ninja. Naruto was glad that Mito was still her innocent self, he knew better than anyone that when one officially becomes a shinobi, they would never be the same ever again. Naruto was still who he was in his youth by a margin, he knew that he would no longer be as naive or as brash, but he was still Uzumaki Naruto. But becoming more cynical and dubious were facts that Naruto cannot deny. The mature Naruto would always check his back. He would always question every stranger. He would never allow a defect to join his army. And he would never leave any loose ends. The life of a shinobi had turned out to be nothing like what Naruto thought it was when he was a kid. It was much more realistic and harsh, and that was absolute. "Mito-chan," cried a happy Asuka as she ran over to her best friend. Mito smiled over at the red-haired cowgirl. "Hey Asuka-chan." Asuka stopped in front of Naruto and Mito with a bright smile on her face. "I finally found you, I had been looking for you for half an hour already." The heiress looked a little sheepish. "Sorry, but I was helping Naruto get some things for his home." Naruto nodded and smiled at Asuka. "Yes." Asuka placed a hand on her hips and smirked at Naruto. "So you really are in Uzumaki, I was wondering if Genryusai-sama would allow you to stay." Naruto smiled and nodded. "Yes, Genryusai-sama was most kind and understanding. From now on I am official a part of the Uzumaki clan," said the man as Mito nodded at his words. Asuka nodded and offered her hand to Naruto. "Well, welcome aboard Naruto-san, I am Uzumaki Asuka, nice to meet you." The lone blonde Uzumaki graciously gripped Asuka's hand and smiled. "Nice to meet you as well, Asuka-san, I hope to work with you sometime in the future." Naruto's words reminded Mito of something important. "That's right, 2-chan haven't official given you a rank yet." "Rank?" muttered Naruto softly as he wondered if the ranking for shinobi were still the same as his time. Mito nodded as she faced Naruto fully. "Yes, in our clan, shinobi and kunoichi all have individual ranks and 2-chan assigns them according to skills," explained the girl as she looked up to the sky absent-mindedly in thought. "Just like the Senju clan, we classify our shinobi as genin, chunin and jounin, with the last one being the most skilled." Naruto nodded in understanding while silently glad that the ranking system was the same. "Based on what I saw of your skills, I believe you should be a jounin." Asuka rose a brow in surprise. "Really?" asked the girl to her best friend. "He's that strong, he looks to be our age." Naruto looked sheepish as Mito nodded assuringly. "Yes, Naruto's skill are definitely good, I'll even say that he might give Tobirama a run for his money," announced the heiress as Asuka eyes widened. "I'm not so sure with Hashirama, but I know Naruto would be able to hold his own against him." Naruto was a humble man, but the kind words of Mito gave him a jolt of pride. After all, it is not every day that one is praised by the legendary Uzumaki Mito that he could potentially be equal to the Shodai and Nidaime Hokage. But these thoughts brought Naruto to the main question. Was he really in the league of the Shodai and Nidaime? Naruto had fought alongside the two great men when they were in their reanimated forms, and he noticed that he was equal with them then, but he no longer had control over Kurama, so that left him on the disadvantage, although the two Hokages were now normal human and were not as strong as they would be when resurrected, so Naruto would conclude that they were not far off in power. Asuka suddenly had a smirk on her face. "Well, you sure have a lot of faith in him, Mito-chan, is someone crushing on her savior?" asked the girl with wiggling eyebrows. Naruto was amused, but Mito blushed and spluttered at her friend. "Quite kidding around, Asuka," cried the Empress and dignified. "I was being serious here." Asuka giggled and crossed her arms together. "Well, I was serious as well, and the blush on your face isn't helping your case." Seeing that Mito was getting very flustered, Naruto intervened and saved the poor girl from further awkwardness. "That's enough for now, Asuka-san, Mito is already flustered enough," said Naruto casually with a smile on his face. "Do you two know of a good ramen stand around here? I am really craving for some." Mito was glad that she was out of the spotlight and nodded to Naruto's question. "You have good taste, Naruto, there is a great ramen place here in the village," said Mito with a smile on her face. "We go there a lot." Asuka grinned and nodded along. "It looks like we have another ramen lover," exclaimed the girl as she linked her arm with Mito's. "Let's go pay Uchiha-san another visit." Naruto gladly followed his two fellow Uzumakis through one of the mellow streets in the village. It was reaching evening and the sun was beginning to set, marking the first day of Naruto back in the past. Naruto's own evaluation for his travel to the past has so far been very successful. In less a day he had already joined the Uzumaki clan, which was much faster than the predicted 3 months. It seems that his ancestors' clan was much more lenient than he imagined. Even the leader of the village hadn't suspected him. While it was certainly a good thing for Naruto, he couldn't help but worry for the future of his clan. The Uzumakis were far too trusting, and that might very well lead to their downfall, even if they were powerful enough to last through the Great Wars. Naruto was glad that there was so much humanity in his clan, but keeping its best interest in mind, Naruto planned to change the naive vantage point of his clan soon. The last thing Naruto wanted to do was to destroy the integrity and honor that made the Uzumaki clan what it was, but the lack of integrity and honor were small prices to pay in order to stay in existence. Naruto was broken out of his stupor when Mito patted him on the shoulder. "We're here, Naruto," chirped the girl as she pointed up at a small stand named Uchiha's Ramen. Seeing the small ramen stand made Naruto remember his dear surrogate uncle and his daughter. Ichiraku and his daughter had been the surrogate family Naruto desperately needed as a child, and he knew that without them, he would have most likely lost himself in darkness. It will always be one of Naruto's greatest regret that he couldn't save them from death during one of Madara's terrible raids. The small ramen stand had been one of the less fortunate structures of Konoha, having been struck by a stray paper bomb fired by one of the Uchiha's minions. Asuka, still linked together with Mito, walked into the stand with a smile on her face. "Hey Uchiha-san, the usual please." Uchiha was a middle-aged man with a kind fatherly look. He was a man with a tall stature and had short red hair that barely reached the back of his neck. He had on an apron that looked to be quite old, considering all the grease spots on it, and his body shared the same delight and aroma with his small stand. The man had a smile on his face when he saw two of his regular customers stroll in, and not just because they were here for business. "Mito-chan," exclaimed the man happily as he stopped his cooking to greet Mito properly. "You're home." Mito smiled and nodded happily. "Of course I'm home, just your ramen is enough motivation for me to survive any mission." Uchiha laughed heartedly and nodded. "Have whatever you want today, Mito-chan, everything is on the house," exclaimed the man excited. "I am celebrating that one of my best customers made it home safe and sound." Asuka pouted at the man and looked up at him with her puppy dog eyes jutsu. "Uchiha-san, what about me?" The cook laughed and patted Asuka on the head. "Of course you get it for free too, Asuka-chan." Naruto was amused by the whole situation and just sat down next to Mito on her right. It was delightful to see Mito and Asuka being on such good terms with Uchiha. It reminded Naruto of his time with Ichiraku and Aim. Uchiha finally saw Naruto and noticed that he was with Mito and Asuka. "And who is this handsome young man?" asked a middle-aged man as he looked at Naruto. "Are you either Mito-chan or Asuka-chan's boyfriend?" Mito spluttered as Asuka giggled while Naruto just calmly shook his head negative. "I am not that lucky, Uchiha-san," said the blonde man, making Mito blush a little. "I am new in the village and these girls told me you have great ramen, so I decided to tag along." Uchiha nodded with a smile before Asuka crept up against the table. "This is Uzumaki Naruto, he is the one who saved Mito on her mission," said the girl while grinning. Mito nodded and Uchiha turned to Naruto with a big smile. "Oh," yelled the man suddenly. You saved Mito-chan. Naruto nodded discreetly. Hi. Uchiha let out a hearty laugh. Well, it seems that I won't be charging a single person tonight. Exclaimed the man as Mito and Asuka giggled. Friends get occasional complimentary dinners from me, and anyone who saved Mito-chan is a friend of mine. Naruto chuckled and nodded. Thank you very much, Uchiha-san. After enjoying a delicious meal of ramen with Mito and Asuka, Naruto returned to his new home and relaxed in his bed. The ramen Uchiha made was delightful, it was almost as good as Ichiraku's, but in the end, nothing will ever be as good as Ichiraku in Naruto's mind. The Uzumaki man had spent a few minutes hanging up the paintings that he bought and placing some delicate decorations around the house. And 1 hour before midnight, Naruto made it to bed and enjoyed a night of carefree sleep. The mornings of the village was filled with hummingbirds singing a peaceful song for the early risers, and that included Naruto. It was perhaps out of wartime habit, but Naruto was glad that he woke up in time to listen to a symphony of chirps from his friendly neighbors out on his porch. Being close to nature had become a habit to Naruto in recent years, and he had developed a habit of sleeping atop of trees instead of a tent when traveling through a forest. He just found it more serene. This is good coffee, mumbled Naruto quietly to himself as he enjoyed a cup of steaming goodness in his living room. Already, Naruto could sense many people passing by the street just beyond his front door, going on early missions for the clan. During dinner the previous night, Naruto had learned from Mito and Asuka that the shinobi corporation of the village was entirely made out of Uzumaki members. There was not one shinobi that was not an Uzumaki in the force, and that surprised Naruto. Seeing how loose the suspicion was with the higher-ups of the village, Naruto expected the village to allow refugees of other clans to join, but apparently the village was quite strict when it came to non-Uzumaki members. Naruto just shook his head at how bad his village was handling its power. While being kind and helpful to Uzumaki members were good, it allows a rift to exist in the security of the village. If one could find a defected Uzumaki, they could very well send him back to the village as a spy, and the village would easily let him in. Then being very strict of foreign shinobi would limit the power the clan had within. If the Uzumaki were willing to accept some defected shinobi from other clans, it would promote diversity in the force and create innovation. Being such an isolationist was not exactly ideal to the island-bound clan. The sudden knock on his front door pulled Naruto out of his train of thought. Who is it? Asked Naruto as he opened the door. On his front doorstep was surprisingly Uzumaki Mito. Hey Naruto, good morning. Naruto smiled at the sight of the beautiful Mito and nodded. Good morning to you too, Mito. Said the man as he opened his door fully. Please come in. Mito nodded and walked inside the home with a bow. Sorry for bothering you so early in the morning, Naruto. The blonde man waved her off with a smile. No problem at all, I am an early riser and I love your company. The Uzumaki heiress smiled and clapped her hands together. I am actually here today to summon you to Tu-chan's office. Chirped the girl excitedly. It seems that Tu-chan had decided to test your strength today so he could officially offer you a rank. Naruto smiled in the prospect of fighting some of his fellow Uzumakis and nodded. That's great, I've been meaning for a nice fight. Announced Naruto with a smirk. Let's go. Mito remained motionless and stopped Naruto with a hand. Wait, shouldn't you change first? Asked the girl as she eyes Naruto's sleeping attire. Just a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. Naruto smirked and made a hand sign. Kai. Chanted the man as his body was suddenly covered by a puff of smoke, and when it cleared he revealed Naruto changed into a battle uniform. Naruto's outfit consisted of a whole body, black combat suit, knee-length combat boots, a pair of arm braces, fingerless gloves, and a black combat vest that protected his torso. This was Naruto's usual fighting uniform in the war, and it had done him well in recent years, so Naruto decided to bring it back with him. Mito was surprised and had a look of bewilderment on her face. Sugoi. Chirped the girl as she jumped up with a smile. Can you teach me how to do that? Naruto chuckled and patted Mito's head like she was a child. Sure thing, Mito. Like the day before, Naruto headed towards the large structure that contained the office of the leader of the village. The place was rather close to Naruto's home, it was just a 5-minute walk away. There was a clean straight road that led directly to the building, and scenery in between were things that Naruto will learn to cherish. It was still early in the morning, and people were just starting to set up their shops and stands, and the sight made Naruto feel like he was back in Konoha again. Making it to the main office 5 minutes later, Naruto followed behind Mito into the ever-winding hallways to the place once again. The blonde Uzumaki was excited to test his power against another Uzumaki, he wanted to see if their Fuinjutsu was really as powerful as he had heard. Knocking a few times on the marble double door, Mito walked in with Naruto close behind. Good morning, Tu-chan, I brought Naruto. Announced Mito as she stood beside her mother just like the day before. Genryusai and Retsu both smiled a little at the young man. How was your first night here at home, Naruto-kun? Asked the aged man kindly. Naruto smiled and bowed a little. It was great, I am already loving this village. Retsu had a smile of her own and gave a slight nod. That is good, we're glad. Genryusai cleared his throat to signal that the casual conversation was over. So, I assume Mito-chan had already told you the purpose of your coming here today. Naruto nodded. Hi. Genryusai smirked and stood up. Good. Said the man as he walked toward the door. Follow me, Naruto-kun. The blonde Uzumaki was rather confused but listened to his leader's words either way. As they walked back out the main office and its building, Naruto looked back and gave Mito a silent question, to which she just shrugged with a playful smile on her face. The walk continued on for another few minutes until the group of Uzumakis reached the edge of the village. Staring out, Naruto saw a vast field that looked to be a training ground with all its targets and equipment in place. As Naruto followed his leader into the large area, he was surprised to see that some people had already gathered at the edge of the field. He saw Asuka and the small boy that hugged Mito at the entrance the day before. If he had to guess, Naruto could say that there were almost 50 people waiting for them, and from what he could sense, most of them were shinobi. These people are here to watch you, Naruto-kun. Said Genryusai without looking back at the young man. They all want to see how powerful is the man who saved the heiress. Naruto nodded and inwardly sighed. He really didn't want to extra attention so early, he still didn't have enough understanding of his power to demonstrate it in front of people yet. In order to gain power and respect within the clan, Naruto first had to prove himself as a skilled shinobi, so he must not fail to impress in front of such a large crowd. Genryusai walked Naruto straight to the center of the battlefield as Mito and Retsu stopped and joined the rest of the observance. This test is to measure your skill and what rank I should bestow you afterwards. Explained the leader with a serious look on his face. Please do the best you can, and if things go out of control, I will stop the battle. The leader of the clan made his way back to the crowd as he spoke. Given your suggested prowess as a shinobi, I have increased the level of difficulty. Good luck, Naruto-kun. Naruto stood motionlessly in the midst of the training field and he could already sense 5 signatures around him. Silently, Naruto focused his chakra and readied himself to unseal his Hiraishin kunai or his katana when needed. Suddenly, 5 shadows emerged from the trees and landed on all sides of Naruto, creating a perfect pentacle around him. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he saw the masks on the men's faces. He knew then that he was up against one of the Anbu teams of the Uzumaki clan. The blonde man smirked inwardly, his leader really thought well of his skills, given that he ordered a match between him and 5 other people who were on the same team. Mito, on the sidelines with Asuka and Ren, gasped. What is this? Muttered the girl as she looked at her friend. I thought it was the regular one-on-one. Mito's question though, was left unanswered as everyone was focused on the fight. Naruto remained motionless and there was not a shred of fear in his eyes, his expression showed the face of a warrior, a man that was unfazed with the challenge presented to him. The blonde Uzumaki smirked and finally got down into a combat position. Come on. At once, all 5 members of the Anbu team moved in swift coordination as they all unsheathed their blades and charged at Naruto. Each member attacked at a 75-degree angle to the right, effectively sealing off all openings of their team attack. The reflection of the blades flashed on the face of Naruto, and a split second before the attack could hit him, he quickly jumped up into the air. It seems that the Anbu team was used to such dodging techniques and instantly reacted to Naruto's newfound height. Suitin no jutsu. Cried one member as another member unsealed some water from a scroll. The water formed into the shape of a dragon and it charged straight at Naruto the instant it gained momentum. Naruto formed a quick hand sign. Futin Kazakiri no jutsu. Muttered the blonde man as he slashed his hand down and sent an invisible blade of wind straight through the water dragon. The blade of wind continued its path downwards and sliced into the ground as the 2 Anbu members jumped back. The 3 other members of the team jumped up and hovered just above Naruto with their swords ready. Again. Cried Naruto as he twisted his body in midair and slashed another blade of wind at his opponents. The Anbu members were not ready for that and tried as best as they could to lean backwards. The blade missed them by a tiny margin, but their blades were sliced clean in half. Naruto landed back on the ground and focused his attention to the 2 Anbu members in front of him. The blonde man unsealed his katana from his wrist and channeled his wind chakra through the blade. A familiar vibration coursed through his arm as he held his blade to his side and ran towards his opponents at high speed. Before the 2 Anbu members could react, Naruto destroyed the swords in their hands and gave each of them a nasty cut on the shoulder. Grunts of pain could be heard from the 2 Anbu members as blood spewed out of their body. Good try, whispered Naruto as he sped between them and landed 2 punches on their temples at lightning speed. The 2 men were instantly knocked out and fell to the ground unconscious. Naruto sensed the other 3 very close behind him and spun backwards quickly. Naruto's blade sliced through their kunais and forced them back a few steps. Futin Atsugai. cried Naruto as a dome of condensed wind surrounded his body before it blasted forward at crushing velocity. The ground tore apart from the heavy wind, and one of the 3 Anbu members was blasted into the distance, while the other 2 managed to pull off a Kawarimi no Jutsu. Off to the sidelines, people were watching in shock as Naruto effortlessly dismantled the Anbu team like they were a genin team. Genusai himself was shocked to see that even with the increased difficulty, Naruto still fight as if he was not trying at all. Genusai himself was rather proud of his Anbu teams as they were powerful and always got the job done, but today was not the case. Retsu was equally shocked. She assumed that Naruto would be very powerful and would be able to pass the test, but she expects some difficulty, not she utter ease. Mito had a smirk on her face as she saw the shocked faces of the people around her. She had personally seen Naruto's prowess as a ninja, and the battle with the Anbu team did not push Naruto to use the jutsu he used against the Uchiha. Mito didn't even know why she was worried for Naruto before. She knew better than anyone present that Naruto would be able to battle the Anbu team with relative ease. The 2 remaining members appeared behind Naruto and flared their chakra. Pain. Raiden no Jutsu. Gyuden. Detopa. The mixture of the 2 elemental attacks created a large inferno that reached a height of 50 feet into the air and it barreled towards Naruto at blinding speeds. The wind made the fire much faster and hotter. The jutsu was scorching the ground beneath it as it traveled towards its intended target. Naruto smirked and unsealed a scroll of his own. Time to show my Fuinjutsu. Thought Naruto silently as he unsealed a pen from the scroll. The crowd of Uzumakis watched in amazement as Naruto started to write with his pen in the air. Very quickly. In an instant, there was a fire seal hovering in the air, in between Naruto and the burning inferno. As the fire made contact with the seal, Naruto placed his palm directly at the center of his seal, and the fire chakra within Jutsu started to break down as it was absorbed into the seal. Every seal needed a container of some sort, and in this case, by placing his palm at the center of his custom seal, Naruto would absorb the chakra of the 2 Anbu members and use it as his own. Naruto had made this sort of Fuinjutsu after he faced off against Haruko, a man who recreated the Miten Kekkei Genkai, which he used to absorb, manipulate, and release chakra taken from an opponent. Naruto found the idea great adaptable to Fuinjutsu, and he recreated a subversion of the ability using his sealing ink and wind chakra to make the seal hover in front of his palm. The 2 Anbu members were shocked to see their jutsu disappear and couldn't react fast enough. Naruto smirked as he appeared in front of the 2 Anbu members. "Here is your chakra back," muttered the man as he pushed his hands forward and a blast of flames and wind struck the 2 members at point blank. The blast instantly knocked out and probably badly injured the 2 Anbu members. The 2 Anbu members were sent flying backwards a good distance before they fell to the ground in a beaten heap. All were quiet as Naruto turned back to a speechless crowd. "Well started, the blonde Uzumaki. Does this mean I am a jounin?" The end. Ambition of the Uzumaki clan Chapter 5. The village was still buzzing from excitement because of the extraordinary abilities the newcomer had shown. It was ingenious to think that one could recreate the effects of Miten using Fuinjutsu, and even more ingenious to succeed in doing so. Never had anyone in the infamous clan of Fuinjutsu had though of using Fuinjutsu such a way, and Naruto's innovation had provided proof to many people in the village that Fuinjutsu was not limited to scrolls and writing. Uzumaki Mito had a smile on her face as she saw the astonished look on her father's face. Mito knew that her father had always wanted a powerful lone shinobi to be born into the Uzumaki clan so that they would no longer have to depend on the Senju clan if they were targeted by singular powerful shinobis. Mito herself, while a talented kunoichi in her own right, was not as gifted as the powerhouses that were her childhood friends. Senju Tobirama and Senju Hashirama were 2 of the most powerful people Mito knew. Since they were children, the Senju clan had been in war and the Uzumakis had often aided them in battle. Mito could still remember the other Senju brothers that have died in the past, she was good friends with them too. Mito noticed that Tobirama became more and more stoic and serious as he aged, and that was perfectly fine, given his harsh past experiences with war. Senju Hashirama, on the other hand, hadn't really changed at all. The happy boy Mito once knew was a happy man today. The current leader of the Senju clan had always been like a kind of gentle older brother to Mito, and she will always treasure him as one of her most precious people. Mito's parents had told her about the potential marriage between herself and Hashirama. The young woman had been conflicted about her own feelings at first, but soon she figured out that the love she had for Hashirama was familial love, not romantic love. Mito was a little guilty about declining the marriage offer since she had noticed that Hashirama had grown to love her romantically, but she wanted to marry a man she truly loved. Mito-chan said a sudden voice beside the heiress that knocked her out of her stupor. "Are you okay?" Mito smiled and nodded over at Asuka. "I'm fine, just thinking about stuff." Asuka grinned and dropped an arm over Mito's shoulders. "Is someone still thinking about Naruto?" teased the cowgirl as Mito blushed a little, even though she wasn't thinking of Naruto. Admit it, girl, you have a crush on him. Mito's blush flared as she pushed her friend away. Shut up. Exclaimed the embarrassed girl. I do not have a crush on him, I only met him a few days ago. Asuka continued to grin slyly. That doesn't matter, Mito-chan. Said the other red-haired girl. You know what they say, there is really something as love at first sight. As much as Mito wanted to deny her friend's words, she had to admit that she was attracted to the powerful Uzumaki. In the brief time Mito had met Naruto, he had already saved her twice from pursuing Uchihas. There was something about his presence near her that made Mito feel safe, and his blue eyes just enchanted her. But no matter what, all she felt for Naruto at the moment was attraction, she had no real feelings for him. Yet. Mito shook her head of her confusion and focused her eyes on the road in front of her. No matter what, I am not focusing on my love life right now. Announced the heiress as she gave Asuka a look. You know I am trying to help Tu-chan and bring the Uzumaki clan to a higher standing. Said Mito while thinking. Without having to marry into the Senju clan. Asuka hummed in thought as she linked her hands behind her back. Well, we do have Naruto now, so that might help us on the power scale. Mito nodded in agreement, she was still certain that Naruto was at least in the same league as Tobirama. Yes, Naruto will definitely be of help. Asuka tilted her head in wonder. Where is Naruto, by the way? I thought he was joining us for lunch. The heiress nodded. He is, but he is going to meet with Tu-chan first. Back in Genyusai's office, Naruto was standing with pride as his leader offered him an official Uzumaki hit I-8. Naruto gladly placed the headpiece against his forehead, and despite the coldness of the metal against his skin, Naruto felt warmth spread out from within his body. Naruto once again felt the fire within him surge with motivation. He was determined to bring the Uzumaki clan to the pinnacle of the elemental nations. Genyusai smiled at the look in Naruto's eyes and patted his shoulder. I like your determination, Naruto-kun. Said the aged leader. Your will and power shall bring the Uzumaki clan to further greatness. Naruto bowed deeply for his leader. I will do my very best, Genyusai-sama. The Uzumaki leader smiled as he walked back behind his desk and sat down. The young man in front of him could very well be the person he would need to bring the Uzumaki clan into the league of the Uchiha and Senju. At the same age as Hashirama, Naruto showed tremendous power and skill. Genyusai wasn't sure if Naruto was as powerful as the Senju brothers, but he knew that it was enough to bring back their former fame. As you know, Naruto-kun. Began Genyusai as he gestured Naruto to take a seat. The Uzumaki clan had been falling into the backwater of the shinobi world in recent years, and that is a dire problem for us. Naruto nodded seriously, sensing the atmosphere of the incoming conversation. The Uchiha and Senju clans were blessed with tremendous talent in recent years, and they have surpassed in his power because of that, but now that we have acquired a wayward son like yourself, I hope you join them in the higher ranks. Naruto smiled, happy that his leader thought so much of him. You flatter me, Genyusai-sama. The old man chuckled and shook his head. I believe in giving credit when credit is due. Genyusai poured himself and Naruto some tea. No ordinary shinobi can take down a full Anbu team of mine without so much as breaking a sweat. Naruto smiled at the implications. You are one powerful young man, Naruto-kun, and you may very well be a beacon of hope for our clan. Naruto graciously accepted his cup of tea with a slight bow before responding. The Uzumaki clan is my home and family. I will give it my all to see the day when we are even more powerful than the Senju and Uchiha. Genyusai smiled and sipped on his tea. I am happy to see such fire in you, Naruto-kun. Sensing that his leader was in a good mood, Naruto decided to test the waters a little. Genyusai-sama. Started the blonde man as he gained the attention of his leader. Might I offer a personal opinion of mine of the clan as of now? Interested, Genyusai nodded with a smile on his face. Of course. Naruto inwardly sighed before he began. I found that the Senju and Uchiha clans are not only powerful because of their exceptionally strong leaders, but also because of their vast number of clansmen. Deduced the blonde man as Genyusai nodded in agreement. Well, in the long term, our clan can promote the idea of having more children to the couple in the village, so we could have that advantage too, but that would be time-consuming and impractical. Genyusai finished his cup of tea and looked at Naruto. And what might you suggest as an alternative? Naruto smiled. Please bear with me, Genyusai-sama, as this may sound unorthodox. Muttered the young man almost sheepishly. But I was thinking that we should acquire ourselves some allies from outside of the clan. The Uzumaki leader was intrigued. You mean from other clans? The blonde had nodded with conviction. Hi. Genyusai was silent for a while as Naruto waited patiently. But as you know, traditionally we Uzumakis have rather been isolationists, and he enjoy our own peace and development too much to involve ourselves with another clan. Naruto nodded in understanding, he had expected that. Yes, but certain sacrifices must be made in order to gain power. Said the blonde Uzumaki. With the aid of other clans our power will increase exponentially and our name will naturally be more well known throughout the lands. The leader smirked and crossed his arms. Say that I agree with you. Who would you suggest as an ally for us as of now? The ex-Konoha ninja was sure glad that he studied up on history before traveling back in time. From what I know, the Inyazuka clan is in a rather nasty turn of fate right now. Naruto was referring to the war the Inyazukas shared with the Shuruma clan. Naruto had read the full story of the war inside one of the archives that remained untouched after the raids on Konoha. The Shurumas were hired by the daimyo of Tsume no Kuni to eliminate the Inyazuka entirely, and the Inyazukas were in dire need of help from annihilation. The Inyazukas are just a tad weaker than the Shuruma clan, and if we offer to help them now, victory is almost assured. Genryusai seemed to be thinking over the situation. Well, that may seem ideal in the long term. Do you think we have enough resources to start a war like this? Naruto nodded instantly without a shred of doubt, now sure that his leader was just testing him. Definitely, we have our own sources of food and weapons from right here inside the village, and it can produce enough to last a war of at least a year. 20 years of being the supreme commander of the allied forces had done Naruto well as a leader. Based on the strength of the Shuruma clan, we would only need 3 months at most to defeat them. The leader leaned further into the table. Another question: why are you suggesting we attack the Shuruma clan instead of the Inyazuka? Asked Genryusai soundly. Even if we win against the Shuruma clan, we would have made an enemy of the Tsume no Kuni daimyo, but if we aid the Shuruma clan instead, we would have gained an ally in them, as well as the goodwill of a nation. The blonde Uzumaki shook his head. No, the Shuruma clan have been known as rather snitchy and dark people who would do anything to reach their goal, which does not fit well with our own code. Reasoned Naruto to his leader. And the Shuruma are also relatively close to the Uchiha clan, and being close to them would put us in an awkward place with our closest friend, the Senju clan. Genryusai nodded at all of Naruto's points. But the Inyazuka clan on the other hand is known as one of the most loyal and honorable clan in the elemental nations. Sure, they are not as powerful as many other clans, but personally I value loyalty above everything and I would very much like to have them as an ally. Genryusai was silent for a few seconds before a smile emerged on his lips. Okay, then let's do it. Naruto was shocked and couldn't find his voice for a second. What? The Uzumaki leader chuckled and rested his arms on his desk. The idea of forming alliances had always been in my mind, but I have never found a capable man to lead the war for me. Revealed Genryusai as Naruto assumed what was coming. You may be a very new member of the clan, Naruto-kun, but you are powerful, and I have faith that you will be able to win us this war. Said the leader as Naruto nodded back. But nonetheless you are still new, and many people will not obey your command if you are to lead this war. Genryusai smirked. That is why I will assign Mito as the commander for this mission, and you will be her second in command. Will that be alright with you? While Naruto hadn't expected such a result, he was happy about it. That sounds great, Genryusai-sama. This will also provide Mito-sama with the needed experience as the future leader of our clan. Genryusai nodded with a smile. Okay then, I will inform Mito of this mission as soon as possible, and while I do that, you have 3 days to prepare for this battle. Naruto stood up and bowed. Hi, Genryusai-sama. Just as the meeting was about to adjourn, the double marble doors opened, making the two men look over to the entrance. Naruto was surprised to see the same boy he saw the day before at the gate with Mito. Like most Uzumakis, the boy had red hair that reached the top of his neck and he had the same gray eyes as Mito. Naruto remembered the boy addressed Mito as his aunt the day before, so it was safe to assume that the boy was a grandchild of Uzumaki Genryusai. Am I interrupting? Asked the boy rather timidly. Genryusai smiled right at the sight of the little boy and stood up. No, we are finished. Said the man without looking at Naruto. Come in, Ren-chan. Ren smiled and ran to his grandfather and jumped into his arms. If you are finished, can you teach me some jutsu, Jiji? Asked the boy with his big round eyes. Mito Abachan isn't teaching me anything. Naruto stood at the edge of the room with a smile on his face. He remembered that he thought Ren resembled Konohamaru a little, and seeing him with his grandfather just made it more clear. Naruto smiled at the thought of Konoha pestering the Sandaime to teach him ninjutsu. The young Tsurutobi had become very powerful and was one of the last of Konoha's forces to perish. The loss of his little brother still haunted Naruto's thoughts, and his only solace was the hope that he would be able to stop Madara once and for all. Ren looked over at Naruto shyly and waved his small hand. Hello, muttered the boy softly. Naruto smiled and walked closer to his leader and the boy. Hello there, Ren-kun, I'm Naruto. Ren smiled and nodded quickly. I know, I remember that you are the one who saved Mito Abachan. Genryusai smiled at his grandson's innocent behavior. The blonde Uzumaki chuckled and patted the boy on the head. I am. The red-haired boy leaned closer to Naruto while still in his grandfather's arms. Can you teach me a jutsu as well? Genryusai, as was Naruto, were intrigued by the boy. Why do you want me to teach you? Ren smiled and held his fists together. Because I want to be strong enough to save Mito Abachan when I am older. Naruto was surprised by the boy's words, and Genryusai just smiled proudly. It is okay if I teach him something, Genryusai-sama. Asked the blonde man, surprising his leader. You really want to teach him something, you are not obligated to, muttered the Uzumaki leader. Naruto smiled at Ren's happy expression as he placed his hands on his hips. The want to protect people precious to oneself is something I respect, and I want to help Ren-kun grow stronger so he could do just that. Ren turned back to his grandfather and clapped his hands together. Please, Jiji. Genryusai sighed and nodded. Fine, muttered the old man as he seated the boy on the ground. Make sure you pay attention, Ren-chan. Naruto-kun is a powerful young man, and you will learn a lot from him. Ren jumped up with a smile. Hi. Cried the boy before he grabbed Naruto's hand and tried to pull him out of the room. Let's go, Naruto Naichin. Naruto smiled at the affectionate suffix inside. Hold your horses, muttered the man as he followed the boy along. The Uzumaki compound was the whole of one village, and it was not very big. The actual village covered about half of the island space, and the other half were mainly forests and a few training fields. Naruto and Ren were at one of those training fields, and the boy was very excited to learn from the strong man who saved his precious aunt. Ren had also witnessed Naruto fight the Anbu team, but he didn't really see anything as Naruto was moving too fast for a child like Ren to follow. After seeing Naruto's skills, the boy practically looked up to Naruto and would want nothing more than to become strong like him. Are you ready, Ren-kun? Asked Naruto with his arms crossed. Standing across from the boy, Naruto couldn't help but think back to the time he spent training with Konohamaru. Both the master and the apprentice were rather idiotic back then, and Naruto knew now that teaching Ren his sexy jutsu would be a very bad idea. Inwardly chuckling at the face his sexy jutsu had made out of the Sandaime and Jiraiya, Naruto outwardly had a straight face on him that slightly intimidated the boy in front of him. Ren was standing as straight as a board as he nodded. Hi. Naruto smiled and nodded. Good, come at me. The wind blew between the two in tension as Ren had a confused expression on his face. What? The blonde man suddenly disappeared from sight and appeared behind Ren in under a second. I said come at me. Exclaimed Naruto as he pushed the boy to the ground. Ren groaned as he hit the ground but quickly stood back up. Fine, you asked for it. Cried the boy as he charged at Naruto with openings everywhere. The red-haired boy took 3 seconds to reach Naruto and launch a sloopy punch at Naruto's torso. Naruto just stood still and let the boy hit him. A baby has more power than you, hit harder. Ordered the older Uzumaki as he pushed the boy down again. Ren growled in anger and rushed back at Naruto. HHHAAA. Cried out the boy as he jumped and kicked Naruto in the chest. It was still miserably weak, but Naruto smiled at the fact that Ren realized that kicking was much more powerful than punching and changed his strategy. It was a good sign for the boy. Still no good, try again. Ren pushed himself up again and relentlessly charged at Naruto with reckless abandon. While Naruto continued to accept the boy's attacks, he was silently monitoring his stamina, chakra control, and chakra reserves. As in Uzumaki, Ren had larger chakra reserve than normal people, and his stamina was that of a proper Uzumaki, but his problem was his chakra control. It was perhaps a very common problem among Uzumakis, because their chakra reserves were larger, they would have more difficulty regarding chakra control. Naruto inwardly grimaced at the thought of the effort he put in to complete master his own chakra. It took him almost 2 years to accomplish. Having to adapt to the chakra of the Kyuubi and part of the Juubi was no easy feat, but the rewards were astounding. The blonde man's eyes widened slightly at the reminder his chakra control should be much better than before. He no longer held the mass volumes of chakra because of the Kyuubi and Juubi, he now only possesses his own natural chakra. A smile found its way to Naruto's face. With his chakra control now, he could most likely be able to recreate Tsunade's superhuman strength. Such power would aid Naruto much in these difficult times. Naruto planned to reunite all the clans in Konoha under Uzumaki's name, and that would require quite a bit of strength. HAHH. Cried Ren as he punched Naruto across the face. Naruto was broken out of stupor from the harder than usual punch from the boy and looked down at him. Okay, that's enough, Ren-kun. Ren was panting a little as he rested his hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. The boy couldn't believe how strong Naruto was. He was punching and kicking as hard as he could for a few minutes straight, and the man took all of the like they were nothing. Ren couldn't even see a mark or a red spot of his face after his hardest punch. Naruto smiled and crossed his arms across his chest. Not bad, Ren-kun. The boy looked up at Naruto confused. And not bad. The blonde man patted the boy's head and nodded with a smile. Yes, I was merely measuring your chakra reserves and stamina, and I have to say that you are pretty good considering how young you are. The boy smiled at his words and nodded. But your chakra control is rather sloppy and it is holding back your usual skills. Ren looked down a little and nodded timidly. Yeah, Bachan had been telling me the same thing, but I am getting tired of the chakra exercises. Naruto chuckled and nodded. I know what you mean, I hate those tedious tasks myself. Muttered the man as Ren chuckled back. How about I teach you a little trick so you can speed it up a little? Ren looked amazed and nodded. Sure, is there something like that? The blonde man smiled and nodded. Yes there is, give me your hand. The boy held out his palm in front of Naruto. This is a seal that I made a few years back, muttered Naruto as he slapped a piece of paper on the boy's hand. What does it do? Just as Ren asked that question, he felt a lot of his own chakra being sucked into the seal and a moment later, a poof of smoke appeared around him. Ren looked on his shock as a clone of himself stood right beside him. He reached out for it and touched its arm. It's a solid clone Sugoi. Naruto chuckled at the boy's amazement. This seal basically creates a cage bunshin for you without you having to cast the jutsu yourself. Explained the man as his hands on his hips. I would teach you the cage bunshin later, but you are not ready for it now, so you will use this seal. Ren looked up at Naruto again with his smile still on his face. But how will this help me with my chakra exercises? Naruto smiled and crossed his arms. The greatest benefit of a cage bunshin is that whatever the clone experiences would be transferred over to the original after it is dispelled. Explained the man as the boy started to nod slowly. So, training with one cage bunshin basically is cutting the training in half, as whatever progress he makes, you get them. Ren jumped up in joy and excitement. Wow, this is amazing. Cried the boy as Naruto chuckled and absent-mindedly thought that the boy was smarter than he was when he first learned of the secret from Kakashi and Yamato. It took him quite some time and a demonstration to understand. So how many clones can I make with this seal? Only one, replied Naruto smoothly. With your chakra right now, one clone is the best number for you, any more you wouldn't be able to sustain them long enough to get any actual training done. Ren had a perpetual smile on his face. Okay, one is still much better than nothing. The boy ran and wrapped his arms around Naruto's waist, taking the man in surprise. Thank you, Naruto Nai. Naruto had a blank look on his face for a brief second before he ruffled the boy's hair and patted him on the back. You're welcome little man, just remember that when you get stronger you have to protect your Mito Abachan as best as you can. Ren looked up at Naruto and nodded. Hi. Wow, you two sure are getting along, said a sudden voice from behind the two boys. Naruto and Ren looked over and saw a smiling Mito looking at them. The young woman had her hands on her hips and seemed to be quite amused at the scene. Suddenly, Naruto remembered that he was supposed to meet Mito and Asuka at Uchiha's ramen right after his meeting, he must have completely missed it. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Sorry Mito, I forgot about lunch. Ren giggled and ran to her aunt. Naruto Nai was teaching me. Mito smiled and lifted Ren up into her arms. Really, is he a better teacher than me? Asked the girl as she kissed Ren on the cheek. Ren looked sheepish and nodded slowly. Well, Naruto Nai's teaching is not as boring. Naruto chuckled as Mito just smiled softly. At least you are not a liar, Ren-chan said the girl with a sigh before she looked over at the blonde Uzumaki. You know, Asuka is a little pissed off at you for not showing up. Naruto smiled and nodded. I'll apologize to her as soon as possible. Said the man as he walked up to his leader's daughter. And I'll say it to you now, sorry Mito. Mito waved him off and held Ren higher in her arms. It's alright, at least you were doing something good for Ren-chan. The blonde chuckled and ruffled Ren's hair. Ren-kun is quite the smart boy, he understood what I taught him quite easily. Ren beamed at Naruto's praise. Ren suddenly popped up and jumped out of Mito's arms. I forgot that Bachan wanted to see me. Cried the boy a little scared. Bye Mito Abachan, Naruto Nai, I'll see you later. The boy immediately ran out of the training field and toward his home. His Bachan would be angry if he was late, she is very scary when she is angry. Naruto chuckled along with Mito as they both watched the boy scramble to his grandmother. Ren-kun is a good kid, but he seems scared of Retsu-sama though. Mito giggled and nodded. Oh yeah, she may not look like it, but Kachan is more feared among the clan than anybody else. Naruto inwardly mused that Tsunade must have received her intimidating powers from Retsu. So Ren-kun is your nephew, Mito. The heiress nodded with a sigh. Yes, his father, who is my brother, died a few years ago when Ren-chan was only 7 years old. Muttered the woman with a soft voice, clearly still sad about her loss of her brother. My other brother died a year after, and Ren-chan had been quite sad ever since. The blonde placed a hand on Mito's shoulder for comfort. The loss of family is never easy, I understand how you feel. Said the man as Mito looked back a little at him. I lost both my parents to the Uchiha clan and my godparents to other enemies. Mito sighed and looked down to the ground. It seems that in these times everyone will have a sad and unfortunate past. Naruto felt very nostalgic at her words. These days, parents are burying their children, villages are razed to the ground, innocent lives are being sacrificed into a never-ending cycle of hatred and war. Naruto had an involuntarily flashback of Nagato moment before he death. Not for long, muttered Naruto. Mito was confused and tilted her head back. What? Naruto looked into Mito's eyes with conviction. I believe more than anything that true peace is attainable, and one day I will achieve it. Announced Naruto with hope surging in his chest. One day, people will be able to understand one another and people will be able to make compromises. Mito dragged onto Naruto's every word. Clans will be able to work together as one united force, shinobi will no longer be known as makers of chaos and havoc, but protectors of peace. You really think it's all possible? Asked Mito softly. Naruto smiled down at the girl and nodded with no doubt in his eyes. I know it is possible, there is a way and I will find it. Said the man proudly. I will break the curse of hatred that condemns us all. There is such a thing as peace, and I will find it. I will not give up. Mito softly laughed and nodded. Sure, I will help you find it. Muttered the woman full of emotion. For some reason I really believe you, Naruto. The blonde looked down at her with a little surprise and obvious happiness. I will follow you to find this peace for us and for all Uzumakis in our clan. Naruto nodded with a smile. You got something wrong, Mito. I am supposed to be the one to follow you. Mito chuckled and sighed. I have a feeling that you will be a great leader, Naruto, and you may very well lead us to victory, said the woman with a smile on her face. Until the time when you gain the trust and hopes of our entire clan, I will be the leader, but as soon as that time is past, the torch is yours. Said Mito confidently. I am confident about being a Kunoichi, but I am not fit to be a leader, that much I know about myself. The blonde thought back to the history books he had read that begged to differ. Don't think that about yourself, Mito, said Naruto as he smiled at the young heiress. I will be your soldier for as long as you want me to me, and I will help you bring our clan to greatness and the world to peace. Mito sighed and nodded before she looked up at Naruto again. You really have a way with words. Naruto chuckled and remained silent as he looked up at the sky. The winds of change is blowing, soon we will bring greatness to the Uzumaki clan and I will achieve true peace or die trying. The end. XD. Ambition of the Uzumaki clan. Chapter 6. The war between the Inyazuka clan and the Shimura clan was well known in the Konoha history archive, but it was known as the War of the Bloody Fangs. The peculiar name came from the ferocity the Inyazuka clan showed and the bloody violence that was inflicted upon them by their enemies. During the war, an Inyazuka would either be a defeated bloody heap or primal survivor with the enemy's blood soaking his body. The war had ended after 8 months of battles that resembled hell on earth. It took the deaths of over 1,000 shinobi before a resolution was signed. In the end, the Inyazuka agreed to leave their native nation peacefully and the country would compensate them for their loss over the war. From what Naruto remembered in the history textbook, the money given to the Inyazuka were barely enough to sustain their significantly lowered numbers for a few months, but the Furl clan had no choice but to take the money because if the war continued they would be destroyed. Naruto had personally worked to fought with powerful members of both clans back in his own time, so he knew their strengths and weaknesses very well, and he can conclude that the Inyazuka clan was not inferior to the Shimura clan. The main reason the Shimura clan won the war was because they had Tsume no Kuni backing them up constantly with financial and physical resources. So we are going to help the Inyazuka clan in this war? Asked a serious Mito as she leaned down closer to the geographic map of Tsume no Kuni. Naruto nodded as he mapped out the distances of various points within the country. Yes, they are our ideal first ally, so we have to save them before they sustain too much losses. Mito nodded in acknowledgement and continued to analyze the landscapes of Tsume no Kuni. They've been in the war for about 3 months now and they seem to be slowly losing ground. Said the heiress as she stood back and read out of the file containing intel on the war. The casualties on both sides are rather even, but the Inyazukas just don't have enough resources. The blonde man nodded. Exactly, and that is where we come in. Said Naruto with a smile as he turned back to a desk and retrieved a file on the Uzumaki's current supplies. For the last 2 years, we have been producing sustainable farms and started to preserve most of their products for storage. Naruto inputted all the numbers into calculator and smiled when he saw the final number. Based on what we have now, we can sustain a war for a whole year and with our farms and manufacturers, we can refill our stocks in 6 months, which is very good already. Naruto and Mito had been researching and planning through their incoming mission for the last week and things have been going quite well. Genusai had officially tasked Mito with being the commander of the Uzumaki forces and Naruto as his second in command. Official training routines had been ordered down to all Uzumaki shinobis, giving all of them a month to prepare for the war. The entire clan and all its subdivision were all working in conjunction with each other to prepare in the month mark and it was going off like clockwork. Naruto had made use of a large office inside the main commander building of the village and filled it almost to the brim with information of all sorts. From geographic readings to weather patterns in the area. Though the room was quite large, only Naruto and Mito worked inside it. There were other lieutenants in the village, but they were mainly focusing on training the troops and left strategy and logistics to the commander and Naruto. "We are going to be moving into the country with about 500 people at first," muttered Mito as she kept punching in numbers into the calculator. "Based on the speed we'll be traveling at and the distance between us and Tsume no Kuni, it will take us about 5 days to get there." Naruto sighed. "That is not fast enough, we should force a faster speed floor." Mito nodded. "We can do that, but our troops might use up too much energy before the battle." The blonde man shook his head. "We don't have a choice, 5 days to slow traveling with such a last group will just show the Shimura clan that we are coming, we need to force it up to 2 days in order to utilize the element of surprise." 2 days? Exclaimed Mito incredulously. "Is that even possible?" Naruto smirked and nodded. "It is," said the man as he looked over at Mito. "You are thinking about all of us moving by land, but that is too slow." Naruto led Mito's finger over to a spot of the map. "This is the largest river in Tsume no Kuni and the current is going to quite rapid because of the recent rain in the area." Mito smiled and had an enlightened look on her face. "You plan to travel by the river?" Naruto chuckled and nodded. "Yes, I checked that we have several large ships ready to go and they should run quite well down the wide river," said the lieutenant as he smiled at his leader. "This way not only will we make the 2-day mark because of the rapid water, our troops will also have full strength when he go into battle having been rested on the ships." Mito was hyped up and nodded. "Okay, so now we can resources and transportation ready, we should decide what to do during the actual battle." The blonde nodded and sat down on his chair. "Of course, what do you suggest, Mito?" The heiress smiled and cleared her throat. "I've been thinking last night," started Mito a little nervously. "Seeing that most people in the Shimura clan are wind users, we can line up our fire users in the front line to lock them in place while our other forces attack at a higher ground." Naruto smiled and nodded, making Mito to let out a breath she didn't know she held. "The main battlefield right now is in the middle of a large terrain filled with mainly grass hills, and we can use that to our advantage." Naruto leaned forward to rest his elbows on his knees. "You mean we will light the field on fire in order to strengthen our fire users?" Mito nodded. "Yes, that way they will be able to attack longer without using as much chakra forming their own fire." The blonde smiled kindly and shook his head. "Mito, fire users are only effective against wind users when the control where their flames are, since they can use their control of the air pressure to deter the original direction of the wind," explained Naruto as he looked directly into Mito's eyes. "But when the flames are accessible to everyone, the wind user can use their wind to force the fire back to our direction." The heiress recoiled and nodded sheepishly. "Right." Naruto smiled softly and sighed. "Don't worry about it too much, Mito," soothed the man as he placed a hand on Mito's shoulder. "This is your first large-scale battle. You will become more adept in these situations with experience." Mito nodded and smiled up at her friend. "Isn't this your first war too, have you been fighting like these before?" Naruto smirked. "I've been in some situations before that is somewhat like a war, but not on a scale this big," said the blonde casually. "But I have experience in creating strategies, so you can rest assured that I can do this quite well." The red-haired beauty nodded. "I know," she said with a smile. "So what do you suggest we do for the initial attack?" The lieutenant cleared his throat and looked down at the map. "I agree with you that the majority of Shimuras are wind users and that is their advantage and disadvantage," started Naruto seriously. "Their advantage is that they have far more wind users than we have fire users and the wind and clear terrain will make us easy to aim for and kill." Mito nodded at her second in command's words. "And that is not all, wind jutsus are usually the fastest out of all the elements except for lightning, but it is also easier to control than lightning, so it is easily the best combat element there is." Mito was becoming nervous. "That doesn't sound good." Naruto nodded. "Normally when other clans are fighting against the Shimura clan, they would have a huge number of people in the front lines to be cannon fodder, all of them would die, but their sacrifice would create opportunity to strike." Mito looked shocked and quite shook her head. "There is no way we will do that, it is just wrong." Naruto smiled. "I am very glad you think so too, Mito, those people are nothing but pathetic," said the man as Mito relaxed, seeing that he was not planning to use a wall of human shields. "My plan is much safer and less barbaric. Do you remember my elemental absorption seal?" The heiress's eyes widened as a smile emerged on her face. "I see what you are planning," exclaimed the girl happily. "You are going to use your might and like Fuinjutsu to absorb all the wind chakra they send at us." Naruto chuckled. "That is the most of it, but because I don't have time to teach many people how to use that sort of Fuinjutsu, I am the only one who can stop the Shimura's attacks," explained the man calmly. But thankfully, I can make a fair amount of clones and each seal can cover about 10 meters of space, so we should be fine. Mito looked a little concerned. But you are talking about your cage bunchen, right? Naruto nodded affirmative. So wouldn't they run out of chakra? The blonde smirked. Normally they would last about 20 minutes if I value quantity over quality, but in this case it is perfect. Said Naruto, getting a little excited. These clone will be using the absorption seals and the chakra they seal with fuel their body because I am also a wind user. Mito gasped at the convenience of the situation. They will be like a self-sufficient engine that will bring our forces to the heart of battle. Mito smiled brightly and sat upright. Good, now we should be ready to go into battle. Naruto nodded. Yes, there is only so much we can plan and assume in war, so now everything we depend on the actual battle itself. Said the man with an optimistic tone. But I have a feeling that the Shimura clan will be running with its tail between its legs. Inyazuka Shinrei was a man of honor and loyalty, and he had the utmost pride of the Inyazuka clan. For 20 years, Shinrei had been the leader of one of the greatest clans in the elemental nations, and he could proudly say that the Inyazuka clan had become greater since his promotion to leader of the clan. Shinrei could look up at the pictures of his forefathers without any shame of regret. As the leader of the clan, Shinrei had no regrets, but as a father of 5, he was worried for his children. Shinrei's 3 boys and 2 girls were his pride and joy, and he wanted nothing but the world for them. Like most others their age, the Inyazuka heirs and heiresses had to train to become ninja at an early age, and they too were forced to fight in the ridiculous war started by a young and naive daimyo. Tsume no Kuni had always been the home of the Inyazuka clan, and they worked in harmony with the late daimyo of the nation. Unfortunately, in Tsume no Kuni's case, the apple fell far from the tree. The new daimyo was nothing like his father. He was a cruel and naive leader who wanted nothing but his own absolution. The Inyazuka had their own laws and values inside the clan, and when the new daimyo requested that they all abandon their name and join him in the palace as the royal guard, Shinrei refused, and that had triggered the war. The Shimura clan was another clan that was native to Tsume no Kuni and had been rivals of sorts to the Inyazuka. The daimyo had sought the Shimura out to destroy the Inyazuka, and the reward would be the unlimited support by Tsume no Kuni as long as he was daimyo. Obviously the Shimura had taken a liking to the new daimyo and plotted a full-on war with the Inyazuka. "Otu-sama, you should not drink anymore," exclaimed a young woman about 20 years of age. She was Inyazuka Kagura, the youngest and a personal favorite of Shinrei. Like all others in the clan, Kagura had twin red fangs tattooed to the sides of her face, and her brown long hair trailed elegantly down her slender back. Shinrei sighed and smiled at his little girl. "I'm sorry Kagura-chan, I never wanted this to happen," slurred out the man in a drunk haze. "All I wanted to do was to protect the clan's integrity and honor, not bring about its destruction." Kagura had tears welling in her eyes and hugged her father. "You did the right thing, Otu-sama, no one in the clan will ever condemn you for this war." Shinrei had to hold back his tears as he stared at the leather wall of his tent he was residing in, right in the middle of the Inyazuka military base. "2 of your brothers are lying severely wounded in the hospital wing, and your remaining brother and sister died." Kagura sobbed into her father's shoulder. "They won't die in vain." Shinrei gripped his fists tightly and gritted his teeth. "We are not weaker than the Shimura clan, but we are losing this war because of that damn daimyo," cried the man as he slammed his gourd of sake on the table, shattering it to pieces. "We can fight for another 6 months at most. If we stall it out any more than that, we will be completely destroyed." Kagura remained silent as she tried to think of a solution to unavail. "All we need is some more weapons and food, that way we can attack at full force and wipe the Shimura out at once." Because of the lack of food and resources on the Inyazuka front, only half of the force were being fed. The force had been split into 2, and each will fight one after the other daily. The fighting side will get to eat the night before, and so on. Because of this, the strength of the Inyazuka had been significantly weakened, but this was the only way to stretch the war out long enough to hope for an eventual side resolution. Kagura sniffed and wiped her tears. "So all we need is the help of another clan?" Shinrei sighed and nodded. "Yes, but that is unlikely seeing that we are fighting a losing war. The other clans are in enough tension already. If they help us they will put themselves in the spotlight," explained the Inyazuka leader. "And that will not be beneficial for them." A large brown canine sat down quietly next to Shinrei as they spoke, and the leader absent-mindedly ran his hand through his Ninken's thick fur. "But no matter what, Hiromaru and I will fight to the very end." Kagura let loose her tears and rested herself against her father like she would when she wounded when he was a little girl. "Why did it have to turn out like this? Please, if there is someone out there, please help us." Hundreds of kilometers away, another father was hugging his daughter one last time before she set out for her own mission. Genryusai had a serious and professional expression on his face, but those close Autumn could tell that he was extremely nervous about his daughter going into battle for the first time. For the last week, Genryusai had made sure that everything was logged and accounted for before Mito left. He couldn't allow anything to go wrong during this war. Not only was it the Uzumaki clan's debut, it was also Mito's official S-ranked mission, and he couldn't lose her. "You be careful out there, be sure to check everything, never be careless," muttered Genryusai as he held his daughter in his arms. Mito smiled and nodded. "I know too-chan, I promise I will come back safe and sound." Genryusai pulled away from his daughter and nodded at her with a smile. "I am proud of you, Mito-chan," said the man as he kissed his daughter's forehead. Mito nodded and headed towards her mother and Asuka. Genryusai, all the while, was focusing his sight on Naruto, who was just standing a few feet away from him. Genryusai wasn't really sure about entrusting so much to the man who had just joined their clan, but something told him that Naruto was a good man and he only wanted to help the clan. Naruto saw that his leader was looking at him, so he started to walk over with a smile. "Genryusai-sama." The leader nodded at the man and patted his shoulder. "Good luck out there, Naruto-kun, and please, look after Mito-chan for me." The blonde nodded. "That is without question, Genryusai-sama." At that moment, Asuka and Ren both came up to Naruto and grabbed onto him. "Naruto," cried Asuka loudly. "You better protect Mito-chan out there and bring you home after." Ren nodded rigorously at her words. Naruto looked down at each other them seriously. "I promise you both, I will protect Mito with my life." Mito, who was just a fair distance away from the conversation, heard Naruto's words and felt her face heat up a little. Shaking her head of unwanted thoughts, Mito walked up to the ground. "It's time to go." Genryusai nodded. "Okay, head out." Mito and Naruto both jumped on top of their respective horses and started their way to the main gate. All the Uzumaki troops were already lined up at the main gate and they separated into two groups to form a passageway in the middle for the high commands. Each soldier was dressed in full black uniforms that Naruto thought resembled a lot like the Konoha Jounin uniform. The Uzumaki symbol was proudly wore on each of them and some of them had the job of carrying a tall banner with the Uzumaki symbol proudly blazed upon it. Mito rode down the passage with a serious expression on her face, trying her best to suppress the nervousness in her heart. Naruto rode silently behind Mito, his eyes locked onto her back. The man was quite worried for Mito, it was clear that she was an innocent girl and have never seen the horrors of war. One could never describe the cries of anguish, the red rivers, the smell of burnt flesh, and the eyes of each man they slay. Naruto was praying inwardly that Mito would remain the vibrant and happy young woman she was after the war. Soon Mito and Naruto reached the front of the Uzumaki army and the former looked back one last time at her friends and family before she turned away and headed out the village. "Are you ready, Naruto?" asked the commander. "Yes," said Naruto clearly. "We are all ready." The army had to travel on foot for a few hours before they arrive at the origin of the largest river in Tsume no Kuni. Naruto had sealed the 5 large ships into 5 scrolls and they were all ready to use once they arrive at the river. For the past few days Naruto had been mentally and physically preparing himself for once again walking into a war. He had fully measured his chakra capacity and his chakra control, and he knew what he was capable of. Now he will test his powers out on the Shimura clan. Steering his gaze forward, Naruto looked outward onto the horizon as he channeled his chakra to the bottom of his horse's souls. "Here we go." Kagura found herself waking up from a night of dreamless sleep and she momentarily forgot where she was. Looking around her surroundings, she saw that she was once again in her father's commander tent, but he was nowhere in sight. Wiggling around in the chair she was sleeping in, Kagura noticed that her father's favorite coat was keeping her warm. She has been thinking with her father inside the tent for the last 2 days and there was no great breakthrough yet. Otu-sama must have gone somewhere already, thought the young woman as she rubbed her eyes free of any drowsiness. The sound of a small whimper beside Kagura made her look down to her side and she smiled when she saw her own little Ninken. "Hey Shiroi-chan," chirped the Inyazuka heiress with a smile as she scratched her darling dog behind his ear. Shiroi was complete covered with wilt fur and had a pair of bright blue eyes. Kagura had chosen him as her Ninken the moment he was born from her older brother's Ninken and she had cared for the dog like her own flesh and blood. Kagura sighed as she turned to the side and kissed Shiroi on the top of his head. "How are you feeling, Shiroi-chan?" The Ninken snuggled against his master's legs and whimpered. Kagura sighed and rubbed her best friend tenderly. "I know I'm scared too, boy." Shiroi leaned up and licked around Kagura's face, making her giggle. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the sound of the battle horn sounded through the whole base and a sudden fear struck Kagura like a bolt of lightning. "Shit," cursed the girl as she ran out of the tent with her Ninken. By the sound of the horn, everyone in the encampment sprang into action, they were all trying to get to their posts as quickly as possible. Kagura watched as her clansmen all rushed back and forth to grab their weapons and equipment to fend the incoming attack and at that moment, she knew that many of them would not come back alive. The familiar feeling of utter dread came upon the girl once again and she forced her legs to move from where she motionlessly stood. Grabbing the nearest spear, Kagura ran along with her clansmen. "Where is Otusama?" asked Kagura authoritatively to a man at her side. The man looked grim. "The commander is already at the battlefront." Kagura felt a bolt of fear jolt down her spine as she sped up as fast as she could to rush to the battlefield. Her father was still wounded from the last battle, and their sudden ambush must be intended to kill him. Kagura cursed the Shimura clan inside her heart as she gripped her spear tightly in her hands. Shiroi was running alongside his master obediently despite his fear, he wanted to fight alongside Kagura no matter what. As Kagura edged up to the battlefield, the sounds of battle already filled her senses like an unwanted disease. From far, she could see a large dust cloud that had taken over the majority of the battlefield, and it housed where the strongest shinobi were fighting. Invisible blades of wind were flying through the battlefield like pestering lethal flies, and bodies were once again dropping one after another. Blood was flowing freely on the ground and slowly painted the grass red. Kagura cursed her own heightened sense of smell as the stench of blood filled her nose. On the other side of the battlefield was Kai Shimura, the eldest son of the Shimura clan leader. Shimura Bakura. Lately, the son of the leader had often taken charge and fought on the battlefield as the leader of the Shimura forces, and he was not far off from his father. Kai was as ruthless and cold-blooded as his father, but he was somewhat justified since they were in war. Sympathy in war was just idiotic. It is the survival of the fittest, and the strongest will win, that is the only rule in war. Ai's personal guards were clashing blades with Shinrei, and the older leader was already breathing heavily. "Damn you Shimura," muttered Shinrei as he Ninken panted next to him. Ai smirked as he sat calmly on his horse. "Come on Shinrei Dono, my father assured me that you would at least be able to offer a decent challenge." Shinrei cried out fiercely and ran forward with his Ninken. "Suga, Pierce!" cried the man as he jumped and spun his body around with Hiromaru. They crashed into one of Kai's guards and sent him flying into the distance. The vortex of Inyazuka power continued to tear up the battlefield, but it was not enough. The 5 remaining guards of Kai all formed simultaneous hand signs. "Futen. K's no Yeba, blades of wind technique," announced a group of men as blades of razor-sharp wind form around their stretched palms. They all rushed to the leader of the Inyazuka, eager to end the war by killing the old man. Ginj Kombi Henge. SMTMRM, Human-Beast Combination Transformation. Double-headed wolf. A cloud of smoke concealed Shinrei from view, and when the smoke cleared, a large two-headed wolf is shown. It large fangs and dripping jaws threatened to tear all Shimuras to pieces as he jumped into the air. CHM Garmga, Super Fang Wolf Fang. The giant vortex of centrifugal force smashed through 4 of the guards and their blade effortlessly. Ai smirked. "You still have 2 left." Shinrei stopped and turned back at Kai. "You bastard!" The dead faces of his children came back to his eyes as he howled in anger. "Die!" cried Shinrei as he charged at Kai at his full speed. Suddenly, 2 shadows emerged, hovering just above the large wolf body of Shinrei, and before he could react, he felt extreme pain pierce his 2 sides. Grunting, Shinrei fell to the ground and reverted back to his original form, Hiromaru lying beside him. The Shimura commander chuckled. "Now this is the end." Shinrei felt his strength leaving him as he pushed himself up. There was a deep wound on his right side, and he looked down to see that his Ninken had the same wound on his left. "Damn it," cursed the Inyazuka leader as he glared at Kai with his primal anger. "This is not over. I will avenge my son and daughter." This time Kai himself jumped off of his horse and delivered a hard kick right at Shinrei's face, sending him flailing backwards to the ground. "Just like you clan, all bark and no bite." Shinrei spat out some blood from his mouth and stood up once again. "I will not die so easily," muttered the man as Hiromaru made his saw to his side. "And you will not underestimate the Inyazuka clan." "Otusama!" cried Kagura as she landed right beside her father with her spear ready. Shinrei actually didn't want his daughter to be here. "Kagura-chan, what are you doing here?" It was left to Kagura to rule the Inyazuka if Shinrei died, and he was worried that if the both died the clan would be left without a leader. Kagura looked at her father with conviction. "I will help you fight this battle." Shiroi was right by his master's side and growled over at Kai. Ai smirked when he laid eyes on Kagura. "I got to say Shinrei Dono, this daughter of yours is much more beautiful than your other one," said the young man with a slick tone that made Shinrei and Kagura sick. "How about you hand her over to me so she can live on after your clan is destroyed?" Kagura growled in pure hatred and anger. "You bastard!" cried the girl as she charged up to Kai with her spear. "Kagura, no!" cried the Inyazuka leader as he ran after her. Ai smirked and easily sliced Kagura's spear in 2 and caught her in his arms. You smell good," muttered the man as he sniffed Kagura's neck. Kagura growled and kicked over her shoulder, but Kai caught her leg and held it in place. "You are flexible too, that makes it so much more fun." "Let go of my daughter," cried Shinrei as he sent a claw at Kai, forcing him to separate from his daughter. Ai jumped back and laughed out loud for all to hear. You are all so pathetic, it is hard to believe that such weaklings would even need someone of our caliber to battle. Sneered the man. I guess your name says it all, you are all nothing but dogs. Kagura and Shinrei were shaking in rage as the battle stormed on around them. You will pay for this. Shinrei sped forward and grabbed the broken spear of his daughters from the ground. Die. Cried the man as he stabbed his hand forward, aiming the spear at Kai's heart. Kai merely caught the spear and sliced it to pieces with his wind. Do you ever have anything else to say? Asked the man rhetorically as he kicked Shinrei back. Otu-sama. Cried Kagura as she ran forward to catch her father. Are you alright? Shinrei coughed out some blood as he looked up at his daughter. Run, Kagura-chan, you can't beat this man, run before he could kill us both. Kai smirked when he heard what Shinrei said. I won't kill your daughter if she shows me a good time, I need a good stress relief. The guru glared at Kai and stood up fiercely. I would rather die than to have anything to do with a pig like you, muttered the girl, as Kai's smile dimmed a little. The Shimura clan will never be as powerful as us, we have our bonds and ties with each other, and you are all just pigs fighting to your last men because of some money. Kai started to glare at Kagura. We will always have our integrity and honor, and you Shimura will forever rot in hell for your evil. Aye, you wench. Cried Kai as he raised his wind-covered hand. I will kill all of you dogs. Shinrei watched on his horror as the man neared his daughter with his wind blade. Kagura-chan. Kagura's eyes remained focused and fierce, she knew that she may die right here and now, but she would accept it with no fear. Just as Kai was about to slash open Kagura's throat, he suddenly felt a jolting pain on his right leg. Everyone's attention were drawn to the sudden spew of blood from Kai's leg as it was sliced off of his body. Ah! Cried the man in pain as he began to fall. Kagura and Shinrei's eyes widened when a man holding tri-pronged kunai suddenly appeared in front of them and slashed away at Kai's leg. The two remaining guards of the young Shimura quickly caught their leader and jumped back. Kai was still screaming with abandon as blood continued to flow freely from his gaping wound. Shinrei looked up at the blonde man. Who are you? The blonde man looked back and smiled kindly at Shinrei. I have come to help. Suddenly, the sounds of many battle horns were blared from behind the main battle. Shinrei, Kagura, and all the others looked back to the edge of the battlefield to see a huge army heading their way. The ground was rumbling from the united footsteps of the hundreds of shinobi charging their way, and from far people would see the banners proudly shown to all. It was a peculiar swirl that everyone present knew it was the Uzumaki clan. Mito was leading the army on her horse as she sped down the grasslands with her katana drawn. Destroy the Shimura clan. Ordered the heiress as the Uzumaki soldiers all cried out for battle, the loud united yell resonated through everyone's ears. Naruto smirked and nodded. You got it, Mito, said the man as he turned back to the shocked Kai and his guards. The blonde man threw his kunai at the Shimura leader, and the moment before the one of the guards blocked it, Naruto caught it in his hands again. His icy blue eyes barred into the soul of the three Shimura men. Die, muttered Naruto as he sliced through the jugulars of the two guards within a split second. I fell to the ground and was scrambling in pain. Please. Before he could say any more, Naruto appeared in front of him, sneered at him. Rasengan. A blue orb of spinning chakra grinded into Kai's body and forced him further into the ground. His cries of pain and anguish could not be heard over the earth grinding against Naruto's spinning chakra. The dome of chakra erupted from the ground as the Rasengan tore it apart, and when it died down, Kai's body could no longer even be found, it was grinded to pieces. Shinrei was up on his feet as Kagura supported his side. The Uzumaki clan. Naruto ironed his gaze in front of him and stretched out his hand with a thumbs up. Yeah. The end. Ambition of the Uzumaki clan. Uzumaki, Naruto and Mito were sitting across from Inyazuka Shinrei inside the Inyazuka main command camp. The previous battle was over almost instantly after the arrival of the Uzumaki forces and the death of Shimura Kai. Without a leader, the Shuruma forces were broken apart from within, and most of them retreated before the battle could go on any longer. The Inyazukas took their chances and attacked most retreating enemies as they could. By the end, it was safe to assume that almost a quarter of the Shimura forces were killed. Shinrei had tiredly invited the high command of the Uzumaki clan back to his command camp and tasked his subordinates to organize enough space for the rest of the Uzumaki members. Mito and Naruto ordered the other lieutenants to help organize the placement of the others, and the two of them had followed the Inyazuka leader back to discuss further actions. I am forever grateful for your help, Uzumaki Dono, said Shinrei graciously as he bowed down a little. Naruto smiled as he looked over at Mito, who mirrored Shinrei's bow. You are very welcome, Shinrei Dono, we hope this is enough to prove that the Uzumaki clan is here to help. Shinrei smiled and nodded. Of course, and I must say that your timing is impeccable. Said the man kindly. Any later and I likely would have died. Shinrei turned to face Naruto fully and offered him a bow as well. Thank you for saving my daughter and I, Naruto-san. Naruto smiled and returned the gesture. There is no need, Shinrei-sama. replied the blonde man as he faced Shinrei and Kagura. I am under direct orders from Mito-sama to protect the high leaders of the Inyazuka clan, I was just doing my job. Mito blushed a little at her friend and subordinate's words, it was actually him who reminded her to treat the Inyazuka leaders as high priorities. Kagura smiled at Naruto. No matter what Naruto-san, you saved my Otu-sama and myself, and for that we are eternally grateful. Shinrei turned a tad serious and looked over at Mito. I was not aware that Genryusai Dono was preparing to aid us in this war and he was kind enough to send his own daughter as the commander. Said the man with a smile. With the Uzumaki clan's help, I am confident that we will defeat the Shimura clan within the next several months. Mito smiled. I agree. Naruto leaned forward and bowed slightly. But a few months is far too long a time, said the blonde with a smirk as the others looked over at him. If we take the initiative within the next 2 days, we can force a peace treaty from them by the end of the week at most. Shinrei and Kagura both looked at Naruto surprised, and Mito was confused. What do you mean, Naruto-san? Asked the Inyazuka leader. Is that even possible? Naruto nodded. Hi. Replied the man calmly. Base of the losses of the Shimura clan suffered today, they would have to travel back to their main base back in the major cities of Tsume, no Kuni in order to recuperate. The others nodded at his words. They lost their general today, and the Shimura would have to elect a new commander for the forces, and all that would take quite a while. Mito nodded. So you are saying that this is our window of opportunity, and we should strike now? Naruto nodded. That is part of what I am saying, said the Uzumaki as the others listened on. I am aware that the Shimura clan had sent almost 70% of their forces out to fight this war, so if we really want today to mark the end of this war, we have to wipe out the now leaderless forces remaining out there. Shinrei's eyes widened at the notion. All the remaining Shimura soldiers out there are all alone, and the higher-ups in the camp right now will place retreating as their highest priority, so it is optimal that we attack them before they have the chance to leave the area. Shinrei crossed his arms and nodded. That does seem logical seeing now we have the support of the Uzumaki clan, and our troops have much higher morale and strength compared to the Shimura clan. Thought the man out loud. But if we attack them now, most of them would just run on the spot and they would be too scattered for us to effectively kill them off. The blonde Uzumaki smirked. I already have that problem accounted for. Shinrei saw Naruto unsealed a map and laid it in the middle of the group. This is the geographic map of Tsume no Kuni, and we are here right now. Started Naruto as he pointed down to a patch of grasslands on the map. The whole landscape is rather flat, and it will be easy for the Shimura to scatter through the area to thin out the casualties, but this whole patch of land is basically sealed off by one large river and several large bodies of water. Kagura smiled. So we would lock them in this area by securing the lakes and river. Naruto smiled. That would be the outer rim of our intricate web, but the real lock lies here. The Uzumaki indicated a narrow canyon-infested area that was due north of the grasslands. This is the main route that the Shimura will take to retreat to their main camp. The canyon pathway was a direct route from the battlefield to the main city of Tsume no Kuni, and its natural structure made it perfect for the Inyazuka and Uzumaki to land their attack. Mito brushed her hair back behind her ear and looked down at the map. The canyons, you plan to ambush them here? Naruto smirked and nodded. Exactly, the natural narrow path of the canyon will lay all the Shimura members out for slaughter. Said the Uzumaki as he leaned back and crossed his arms. All we have to do is to plant several legions of troops at the top of the canyon, and when the majority of the Shimura forces pass through the area, we bombard them from above. Naruto looked back down on the map. The idea is that we will organize several legions on top of the canyon, and when that is ready, our main forces will launch a full-scale attack to the Shimura base, forcing them to retreat to the bottleneck where we will completely destroy them. Shinrei nodded but was still dubious. Well, that all sounds ideal, it is much easier said than done. Said the old man as he closed his eyes. In order to get to the canyon, we would have to bypass all the sensors the Shimura have on their side, and the winds above the canyon will be very violent during the night, so it will be hard for our troops to get on top of it without losses. Naruto waved the man off. That is where I come in. I have some abilities that will enable me to teleport all of our needed troops to the top of the canyon. Kagura and Shinrei looked at Naruto, still dubious. I know it may seem far-fetched, but I need you to believe me on this. Shinrei was silent for a moment and his daughter was looking over to him, indicating that he has the con. Naruto-san, you were the one who saved me and my daughter today, and I believe that if you really wanted to harm us, you would have just let us die, started the man as Naruto faced him fully. I will offer you full command of my forces tonight, and we will fight to the death if it means ending this war as quickly as possible. Mito and Naruto both smiled and nodded. Thank you for your trust, Shinrei-sama, I promise to bring us to victory tonight. Night has finally fallen in the dry country of Tsume no Kuni, and the Great Plains were covered in a thick shade of darkness. The atmosphere was silent and calm, but hidden on the Inuzuka, Uzumaki front, the front lines were filled with fierce stares of eager soldiers ready to march into battle. Dinner for the troops was 3 hours ago, so everyone was warmed up and fully sustained. Shinrei and Mito were standing at the very front of the large army, waiting for the signal of Naruto. Shinrei sighed and crossed his arms together. "You know Mito dono, I have never heard of Naruto-san before," started the man as Mito looked over at him. "Surely a man of his abilities would be revered as a powerful shinobi, but I have never heard of his name before." Mito smiled and nodded. "Naruto joined us a short while ago, he is the son of a wayward daughter of the Uzumaki clan, and he had decided to join the clan after the death of his parents." Shinrei nodded as Mito spoke. "Naruto works in very discreet manners, so it is not surprising that his name is unknown to most." Shinrei nodded in understanding. "I see." Off to the distance of the darkness, Naruto was barreling down the grasslands at top speed. The blonde man suppressed his chakra to a minimum as he skimmed through the vast land at blinding speeds. Naruto could sense the vast numbers of the Shimura clan just ahead of him, and he sensed that the negative emotions in the large camp was surging outward the waves. Naruto understood the Shimura clan's distress, their leader was killed, and their enemy just made a huge ally out of the Uzumaki clan. The situation was dire for them at best. Naruto was sure that the Shimura clan would be retreating very soon to avoid further confusion and casualties, and he must put his plan in action before that happened. The Shimura clan was almost sure that they will emerge victorious in the war, so they made a rather permanent camp, and that will cost them several additional hours to pack up. They cannot abandon their camp, seeing that the last thing they would want would be the Inuzuka clan to steal all of their resources. That would put them in a very bad position. Naruto made a rather sharp turn to the right and arrived at the base of the right side of the canyon. "Here goes nothing," muttered the man as he jumped up and used his chakra-filled steps to run up the natural narrow stone wall as discreetly as possible. The wind was indeed very violent as Naruto gained height, but it was relatively simple for a man of Naruto's stature. Looking up, Naruto deduced that the canyon was quite tall, over 300 feet in height, very acceptable for his plan. The Uzumaki landed on the top of the canyon with a smirk on his face. "Well, that was quite simple after all," muttered the man to himself as he looked down at the Shimura base. Looking back to his side of the canyon, Naruto knelt down and planted a jutsu shiki on the surface of the rock. Naruto looked over to the other side of the canyon, roughly 50 feet across from his side. Unsealing a Hiraishin kunai from his wrist, Naruto narrowed his eyes over to the other side as he pulled his hand back. Based on the wind current and the distance, Naruto would have to throw the kunai about 45 degrees to the right in order to hit his intended target. Channeling some wind chakra into the kunai to increase its cutting power, Naruto threw the kunai with deadly precision, and just as he predicted, the kunai struck a large piece of rock and embedded itself tightly within. "There we go." Quickly teleporting back to the Kuani he left with Mito, Naruto appeared in front of his beautiful leader with a smirk on his face. Phase 1 is complete. Shinrei and Mito were both a little shocked at Naruto's sudden appearance, but smiled back at him nonetheless. "Great job, Naruto," exclaimed Mito with clear relief. She was quite worried for her second-in-command and good friend. Naruto smiled and nodded back. "Thank you, Mito-sama." Shinrei walked up to Naruto with a serious expression. "We have separated 2 groups of men just as you assigned, they are right over there." The blonde Uzumaki nodded and headed over to the 100-man separated into 2 groups, each of them standing parallel from each other, 50 feet apart. This group was a mix of Inuzuka and Uzumaki members, all among the weaker members of both clans. Naruto wanted to reserve the stronger members of both clans for the main forces that will be charging head-on with the Shimura. The weaker ones will serve a greater purpose, attacking from above from the top of the canyon. Mito had provided the 100 men with hundreds of paper bombs and kunai, all sealed into small scrolls. The ambush from the canyon will majorly be dependent on heavy projectile attacks from above, and the splash damage of the paper bombs will make things all the more successful. Naruto walked up to the group with a strong sense of authority. "Is everyone ready?" "Yes, Naruto-sama," cried the 100 men in unison. Naruto's eyes scanned the crowd and made contact with each pair of eyes he came across. After having been the supreme commander of a 10,000-man army, Naruto had grown accustomed to dealing with nervous troops. The 100 men in front of the Uzumaki were all the younger and weaker members of both clans, and naturally, they also had much less experience on the field compared to the others, and yet, their mission will be much more violent and gory than the others. The blonde Uzumaki inwardly sighed as he cleared his throat. "I know everyone here is nervous about the upcoming mission," stared Naruto seriously. "But this is something we all must do, this is our responsibility as Inuzuka and Uzumaki members." The 100 men gave Naruto their undivided attention. "I will not sugarcoat anything, this mission will most likely be the most gory and violent slaughter you will have experienced, and some of you will feel extremely repulsed, but it is going to be okay." Mito and Shinrei were also looking back at the scene with interest. This is what we must come to accept during times of war. You all must learn that in order to stop all of this violence is to end this war as soon as possible, and that is your mission tonight. Hi. Resounded the group of shinobi. Naruto placed his hands behind his back and stared down at the men authoritatively. Our mission tonight is to ambush the Shimura forces from above the canyon. We will be attacking them with vast numbers of paper bombs and various other projectiles. Our goal tonight is to kill at least 90% of their forces before daybreak. Already, Naruto could see some of the faces in the crowd contort with disgust and nervousness. No matter how nervous or repulsed you feel, I will expect all of you to carry out the orders I give, and one who does not comply will be charged with insubordination and will be held responsible if the mission fails. Naruto paused to allow the information to sink in. Do you understand? Hi, Naruto-sama. Naruto glared at the group and flared his chakra. I said, do you understand? Hi, Naruto-sama. Shinrei had a smirk on his face as he turned to Mito. I don't know what that young man did before he joined your clan, but he is one good leader. The Inyazuka leader was impressed with Naruto's natural aura of authority and his way with words. It was truly rare to see in someone so young. Mito smiled and nodded. Yes. Naruto made 2 cage buncheons, and each of them walked up to an individual group. All of you put your hand on the shoulder of the man in front of you. The blonde Uzumaki waited through a few seconds of shuffling before each clone reached out and clasped the shoulder of the one man in front. I am about to teleport all of you to the top of the canyon, do not be alarmed by the sudden strong winds and height. The 2 clones looked back at their original and nodded. Duration no jutsu. But the sudden rush of air back to the now empty space, the 100 men along with the 2 of Naruto's clones disappeared. Shinrei and even Mito looked on at the scene with shock. To transport so many people at once with a teleportation jutsu alone was nothing short of incredible. Other shinobi have in their possession all kinds of teleportation jutsus, but they would usually require at least 5 people to activate the jutsu. Mito shook out of her stupor and looked back at the original Naruto, who was still standing in front of the empty space. Why are you still here, Naruto? Asked the heiress as she walked up to him. I thought you were going to give commands from the canyon. Naruto smiled and shook his head. My clones will be able to do that, I'm going to stay here to fight by your side. Mito blushed a little and smiled back. Okay, I feel more comfortable when you're with me. Whispered the girl nervously as she timidly looked up at the blonde Uzumaki. Naruto smiled at his leader and friend, she looked more beautiful every time he laid eyes on her. Mito's normally long flowing red hair was tied into a ponytail that hung over her shoulder delicately like a valley of roses. She still had her usual light makeup that expressed her angelic facial features even more beautifully in the moonlight. Though Naruto preferred see Mito in her elegant kimono, she also looked very pretty in her kunoichi uniform, which did nothing to hide her voluptuous figure. Mito's blush intensified when she caught Naruto staring at her. Naruto-kun. Mito's blush reddened even more with the affectionate suffix she used in his name. Naruto also seemed a little flustered and shook his head a little. Sorry, we should head out soon. Muttered the man softly before he patted Mito on the shoulder. I will be right next to you the whole time, but be careful, okay? The Uzumaki leader nodded. I will. The Inyazuka and Uzumaki had about 1,500 men in number, and Shinrei and Mito will each lead half of the force. Mito will charge in from the right as the Inyazuka will charge from the left. The attacking forces will basically be a U-shaped design to prevent the Shimura members from scattering to the sides. But just in case, Naruto had sent 2 teams to the far sides of the area, who will be slightly ahead of the main force to prevent anyone from escaping to the sides. Despite the fact that the main goal was to force the Shimura into the bottleneck, the large army was creeping into enemy territory as silent as possible, so they could have the best ambush. Each shinobi were using their chakra to run along the plains to minimize the amount of noise traveling made. Shinrei, based on his experience fighting with the Shimura, their best sensor, had the range of about 300 meters, so the earliest moment they will be discovered will be when they are 300 meters away from the camp, which was more than enough to launch a fast full-scale attack. Man and K9 barreled down the left side of the battlefield ferociously, their killer intent was almost palpable in the air. The Inyazuka clan had lost many comrades in the war, and as their reputation would suggest, they will avenge their family with cruel ferocity. The Inyazukas bared their fangs at the Shimura clan, who had slaughtered their clansmen like animals and took pride in seeing them suffer. The death of Shimura-kai was not enough, they will kill every Shimura present in the war. Shinrei ran alongside his daughter and his ninkin. Tonight I will avenge your brother and sister, muttered the man with a face void of any emotions as his eyes maintained locked upon the incoming Shimura base. They killed my own flesh and blood, so they will atone with their own blood. Kagura had tears welling in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them off as a fierce expression came onto her face. I will also avenge Nai-san and Ni-chan. Her ninkin barked in response and had a low growl between his teeth as the smell of enemy blood filled his nose. Off to the Uzumaki side, Mito had a nervous look on her face as she neared enemy territory. She knew perfectly that attacking the Shimura when they were weak was the best bet for the whole army, but despite her logical side telling her that it was alright, her ethical side was screaming at her to stop. Growing up, Mito had learned about honor and moral codes on the battlefield. Shinobi were exceptions to the codes, but acting so cowardly made Mito feel disgusted about herself. Naruto, sensing what his friend was thinking, placed a hand on her shoulder as he ran alongside her. Mito started the blonde as the girl was knocked out of her stupor and looked back at him. I know how you are feeling right now, I am feeling the same way. Mito had a little bit of guilty shame in her eyes. It is perfectly normal for you to feel bad about this, it shows that you will be a kind and ethical leader, but this is something we must do. Mito looked disturbed and shivered a little. There is no other way. Naruto smiled and slowly shook his head. If we take this chance we can end this war immediately. Any more stalling would just cause more Uzumaki casualties. Explained the blonde Uzumaki as kindly as he could. I know that most of the Shimura clan will be wiped out today, and that is a tragedy, but I would rather kill more of them than to allow more of our own men to die. Mito's eyes widened at the obvious implication. This is what happens in war, Mito. It is a survival scenario, only the strong will win. It is unfortunate and depressing, but we must accept it for the time being. The Uzumaki era seemed to be digesting Naruto's words as she ran absent-mindedly. Okay. Naruto felt a striking sadness in his heart as he clasped Mito's shoulder tighter. But I promise you this, one day the Uzumaki clan will lead the clans into an era of peace and no one will have to go through something like this again. Mito, despite her strong conflicted emotions, smiled back at Naruto with a nod. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded before he turned serious again and locked his eyes ahead. They have reached the 300 meters mark. Get ready, Mito, this is it. Corresponding with Naruto's words, the Shimura clan started to shuffle with activity and bright lights from the base suddenly turned on and lit the area. The green grass was once again in full view as battle horns in the Shimura base blared into the distance. Naruto could already sense everyone in the camp all jump into action and hurry to defend their base entrance. The Uzumaki was impressed with the fast logistics of the Shimura, but he knew it was all futile because he would also feel tremendous fear and frustration within the base. Compared to the fierce and motivated morale of the Uzumaki Inyazuka front, the Shimura stood no chance at all. Terrifying sounds of clenching jaws and deep growls came off in waves from the Inyazuka side as torrents of jutsugas were being launched into the enemy base. The ferocious and feral forces of the Inyazuka members and their ninkin shredded through the scattered Shimura forces like wine through paper. Cries of anguish and despair filled the area, causing some of the less experienced people in the attacking army to feel guilty and overwhelmed. Mito had to bite her own lips to prevent tears from spilling over her eyes. Uzumaki's attack, ordered the heiress loudly. Hundreds of kunai wrapped with paper bombs were instantly thrown to the far ends of the Shimura base at Mito's command. Hundreds of explosions sounded through the area as the ground shook violently with the heavy damage of the bombs. The Uzumakis all let out a unified cry of battle despite all the guilt they felt and charged straight into the disassembled Shimura base. The Uzumakis haven't been in a war in quite some time, so seeing the bloody scene in front of them was disconcerting to say the least. The normally green grass were soaked in fresh blood, random limbs were scattered around the area, and piles of unrecognizable flesh scattered throughout like discarded trash. The white leather tents were bathed in red, and the cries of pain and anguish was deafening to all. This was no longer war, this was a massacre. While it was the first time the Uzumaki launched an attack directly at the Shimura base, their forces completely overwhelmed their enemies. The Shimura members were all scattering their base like frightened deer, all scrambling to get out of their base as quickly as possible. Naruto grunted as he ran through piles of corpses toward a group of frantic enemies. Gomen whispered the man to himself as he sped through between them and sliced through their jugulars with his wind's chakra. It was quick and painless. Shinrei had lost himself in the midst of his onslaught. All he could think about were the faces of his dying son and daughter and how frightened they looked before they took their last breath. His children were only just starting their lives, yet they died before they could even be married. Just that thought filled the Inyazuka leaders with untamed rage, and that fueled him to slaughter as many Shimura members as he could. The aged man was covered in blood along with his ninkin as they plowed through men like they were cattle. Dozens of men fell around them in shredded bloody heaps. "This is for my children," cried the man as he crashed a powerful jutsuga into one of the larger camps in the base. "Die, Shimura scum." The guru was just behind her father and she was glaring all around her as tears fell freely from her eyes. In her hands was a katana that used to belong to her beloved older sister, who was killed just a few months ago. Kagura swore that she would avenge her by killing as many Shimura members she could with the same blade. The guru was having an inward battle as she continued to cut down her enemies rapidly. She was happy that she could finally avenge her siblings, but she felt like a monster for killing so many others. "Die," cried Kagura as her eyes were overflowing with tears. Uzumaki Mito was a short distance away from her Inuzuka counterpart and she was in a very similar state. The young woman's clothes were just as red as her hair as she continued to kill one man after another. Mito had killed before on missions, but never did it seem too easy and casual. Personally, Mito rather fight and kill opponents who could offer her a good fight, that way she wouldn't feel as guilty as she did at that moment. Many of the Shimura members were just scrambling to the feet trying to flee from the horrible sight, but they would be cut down before they would even cry out their loved ones' names. Many of the people Mito killed still had their eyes opened as she looked down at them, and she would never forget how they would look like. It was a stare of complete and utter despair and anguish. Mito knew that they were looking directly at her as their pupils grew dim and she felt her soul crumble more and more as she sliced through more men. "Ah!" cried Mito in anguish as she tried to blank herself while she slaughtered her enemies. The Uzumaki heiress held a kunai in each hand as she sped through the area soaked in blood. She could feel the stinging pain of fatigue in her feet, her hands, and especially her arms. But Mito couldn't stop, her adrenaline forced her to continue her onslaught until she had accomplished her mission. The cries of hell started to fade around her, and all Mito could hear was the sound of her own heartbeat and breath. For some reason, Mito noticed that her heartbeat was going much slower than what she would expect, and her breathing was going very slowly. It was as if time had begun to slow down for her, and the horrible scenes in front of her were being permanently carved into her mind. Mito wanted to stop. Mito wanted to cry. Mito wanted to give up. But for some reason, her body wasn't responding to her commands, and she continued to spill blood onto the normally beautiful green grass. Mito felt cold, her clothes were soaking in blood, and her armor seemed to weigh more and more with each passing second. Everything in her eyes were now red, be it the moon, the usual white tints, and the endless green terrain. The sight in front on her was an ocean of blood and dead bodies. No matter where she looked, Mito couldn't find one shred of normality. "What?" thought Mito in a frantic daze. "What is that?" A bright shade gold appeared in her eyes, and before Mito knew it, she landed in the arms of Naruto. The man wrapped his arms around her very tightly, and it actually offered Mito great comfort. The cold was slowly lifting, and her eyes were locked onto the golden locks of her friend. A very peculiar smell invaded Mito's nose. She ignored the hint of sweat and blood that came with it and concentrated on the small scent of sweetness. "Vanilla," spoke Mito inwardly as she rested her body against her friend. Naruto had an extremely worried look on his face as he held his friend tightly and securely in his arms. It was clear that Mito was not nearly ready for such an experience, and she was thrown straight into the middle of it without any preparations. Naruto knew that it was necessary, and many people he knew that done so before. He couldn't help but feel extremely guilty about putting the innocent girl through all of that. Naruto found himself praying to Kami that Mito would still remain the happy and cheerful girl he met a short while ago. "It's okay, Mito-chan, it's over, you have completed your mission," softly spoke Naruto into Mito's ears. "It is finished, there is nothing more you need to do." Mito began to slip back into reality and her tears continued to flow down her blood-stained cheeks. And Naru choked out the girl in anguish. "And Naruto-kun." Mito wrapped her arms around Naruto as tight as she could and clung onto him like a lifeline. Naruto held her tighter in response and kissed the top of her head. "I'm right here, Mito-chan, I'll always be here for you." Mito sobbed heavily into Naruto's clothes, which were without any blood. The man was too fast for any blood to be spilled on him. Oh my god," cried the girl hysterically as she grabbed a handful on Naruto's clothes. So much blood." The blonde Uzumaki started to channel his chakra around his body to create a warm sphere around Mito. "I know, Mito-chan, but that is all over now, we finished our mission," whispered the man softly against Mito's tragically soaked hair. "We can go home, we'll go back to Yuzu to see Ren-kun and Asuka-san." Mito started to calm down in Naruto's arms. "We'll go back to see Genryusai-sama and Retsu-sama, we'll all go home together." Mito's eyes started to close and her tears seemed to have ceased. She finally fell asleep. Back on the top of the canyon, the two clones of Naruto were each perched on each side of the canyon. They had the ability to sense negative emotions just like their original, and they could feel a wall of despair and guilt coming from the Shimura base. The clones knew that these feelings were not only from the Shimura clan members, most of the Uzumaki members were very frustrated. Naruto's clones sighed in unison with crossed arms as they looked down at the horrible sight. "This is why I came back to the past, so I can stop all of this sooner," thought one of the clones as he closed his eyes. A second clone looked back to the 50 men behind him and saw that many of them had tears in their eyes and were shaking. The copy of Naruto could understand why the men were feeling so terrible about all this. He knew from experience. The first few years as Supreme Commander was hell every day. He would be forced to visit and see battlefields covered with dead bodies and bloody terrain. But time was the universal solution, and the pain will ease in time. "I wonder how Mito is doing," thought the second clone, oblivious to that his original was comforting the distressed heiress that very moment. From high up, it was clear that the main battlefield was leaking Shimura members quickly, and a mass of them had gathered on the open field, running towards their direction. It was almost time to strike, but according to the plan, they were to wait until the majority of the Shimura members were inside the area. Letting a few of them escape was also part of the plan. It would allow their terrifying victory to travel back to the capital of Tsume, no Kuni to strike fear into them. It will give the Inuzukas better peace treaty terms. Their bodies hiding to the shadows and their voice hidden in the loud winds, the canyon forces stared down to see the first few members of the Shimura clan leak through the cracks. They were the sum of the luckiest men alive a few moments later, and they would be skewered together with their unfortunate clansmen. The clones looked over at one another and nodded. "Get ready," said both clones as they raised their respective right hands into the air. The 100 men behind them were all lined up against the edge of the canyon, all ready to descend upon the men below with a slice of hell. Both clones' eyes turned steel cold for a second as they lowered their hands and pointed downwards. Now. At once, all the armed shinobi from above created a rain of kunai and shuriken down upon the men below. They were to refrain using explosives in case they weakened the canyon structure too much, so they were inclined to use traditional shinobi projectiles. But in the narrow pathway in the canyon, one kunai was able to pierce two men overlapping each other, and together, the hundreds of weapons created a literal hellhole in the middle of the canyon. Most of the men had tears in their eyes as they forced themselves to continue until they had no weapons left, just as they were ordered to do. Most of them clamped their eyes shut and blindly threw their weapons down into the narrowed path, trying their best to ignore the loud cries of pain and begs for mercy. The Shimura men below were bellowing in fear, and some of them were egging for mercy with their hands up, but they were still sliced down. Both clones of Naruto crossed their arms and rose an eyebrow at the scene. Even for the war-hardened Uzumaki, it was rare to see such a slaughter. Naruto's plan had certainly worked like a charm, and the war was as good as over, but he and his clones couldn't help but feel extremely guilty and repulsed by his actions. With a breath of cold air, Naruto reminded himself that this was a war, and he did what was best for his side of the war. It was as simple as that. One by one the men started to stop because they had no more weapons to throw, and most of them fell down into a crying heap. The sound below had also faded to almost nothing. A few had survived and were buried under their dead clansmen. Both clones gave the signal to stop and sighed. "That's enough," muttered both clones solemnly. "Good job everyone." From far, the original Naruto saw that the barrage of weapons was over and everything was quiet. This was a fact that Naruto had gathered through his decades of experience in warfare. It's that the most gruesome and one-sided wars were the ones that will be the most quiet at the end. The silence was deafening. Everyone seemed to be staring at the ground, recollecting the last half hour that seemed like a whole year. Shinrei was holding a silent and crying Kagura in his arms with an unreadable look on his face. The man had been through such scenes before, but no matter how many times had he experienced such carnage, he would never become accustomed to it. But Shinrei knew that in the end, this slaughter was a good thing. At least this way his clan would be able to survive, and the war was finally over. In the back of his mind, Shinrei wondered what sort of peace treaty terms the Shimura clan would offer them, and how the daimyo would try to resolve the remaining conflict. Naruto was still holding a sleeping Mito in his arms, and he took the time to carry her gently in his arms. It was at that time that a shower of very early rain decided to damp the bloodied field. It was as if Kami above was trying to wash away all the blood that had been spilled in the brief time. Naruto gently used his thumb to clean Mito's cheeks of blood and ran his fingers through her redder than normal hair. Mito looked finally at rest in her sleep, but her grip in his vest was still very strong. Naruto didn't mind, he would be with her for as long as she liked. "I'm sorry, Mito-chan," whispered Naruto as he leaned down and gently pressed his lips on Mito's forehead. "I promise you soon you will never have to go through this again." The end. What if Naruto goes back in time to save the Uzumaki clan? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.